Hello, everyone. Welcome to Developing Palates. I'm Aaron Loomis, and with me today is the Developing Palates team: June Liu, Seth Geist, John McTavish. How you guys doing this evening?
Buenos
Good,
noches.
good man. It's nice being one quarter reviewer. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
It's one quarter person.
One quarter person. Well, I don't,
Right.
sounds weird when I say it like that. You know what I'm saying? So I just want to say one quarter reviewer.
45-year-old quarter.
It's because you're afraid.
45-year-old,
to go
that's
down
right.
that road, man.
Happy
That's
birthday
right.
to me.
Yes, it is. Happy birthday to you, John. Happy birthday. So
Thank you, Aaron.
today we are doing our 2019 Cigar Media Recap, and we are joined by two special guests tonight. The first that we'll introduce is Eric from Cigar Dojo. Welcome, Eric.
How you doing, guys? Thanks for having me on the show. Excited to be back.
Absolutely. And we'll also have Ben Lee from Stogie Review with us. How you doing, Ben?
Hey, doing great. Glad to be on here.
Thanks for coming on. So we will start with some positive notes tonight as we recap 2019. And we're going to talk about some surprises in regards to individual cigars or brands that not necessarily that's something that you enjoyed this year, but something that was maybe came up a bit farther from behind than where you were expecting it and kind of gave you a surprise. So I'll open this up to both cigars and brands, and if there's anybody else going to jump in, or I can get started and we can kind of go from there. So if anybody want to start out with any surprises for 2019?
I'll hop in because,
All right.
whatever.
Do it.
Davidoff, believe it or not. And only because the Davidoff seemed to have some really early strong releases in the year with the Winston Churchill late hour kind of off the top of my head. And I always worry when a brand starts out really strong early in the year because at that point I'm thinking, have they blown all their good releases? If we get to the show, are they only going to have one or two things to show? And it seemed like, like every 3 months they had some sort of limited release or new release coming out. And every single one of them seemed to perform well, which, I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but I was surprised. The other one that really shocked me that keeps delivering is the San Pedro line. Just continues to outperform its price point. Cigar after cigar after cigar, and one of the brands that I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what they've got up their sleeves next year.
Very nice. Who'd like to go next?
I'll go, man. I'll jump in there.
Go, Seth.
Really on a small end side, I was really surprised and pleasantly surprised with Casa Cuevas this year. I was harsh on some of those early stuff, but this year I thought they had some really good stuff they released to market. And then on kind of the bigger end, I think it was a really good year for Altadas. I think they had a lot of, solid blends, some really nice ones throughout their entire portfolio, and I hope some of them really take off well. So yeah.
How about you, June?
Agree with the Cuevas thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a fun name to say. It's Cuevas. Anyways, let's see. So for me, I felt like within, especially kind of the JSK brand, I actually haven't really truly liked anything Rustace put out with since he originally came out with his like Connecticut Shade and his original Red Light. But I thought that Tyranno Buck Maduro broadleaf was really good. It was a funky band within that dinosaur thing that he was doing. But the actual cigar was really solid. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
All right, Eric, how about you? Any surprises this year for you?
Yeah, I'd say, at least me personally, I was surprised with a lot of the stuff that HVC did. The Serie A is amazing. I don't know why, but for some reason, HVC was sort of like off my radar. You know how that goes? Like where like a lot of people know about them and a lot of people love them, but I was just never, I just hadn't had much of their stuff or paid much attention.
Right.
But then the Serie A and then that 500 was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And so those two cigars blew me away. I feel it's exciting. It's like, like Aaron, when you like get an old coat out of the closet and you find like a $20 bill in there.
Yeah.
It's like, I knew these guys all along.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden I found like a new thing that I dig, like
right.
it's fun to find a new brand that you haven't paid any attention to whatsoever. And now all of a sudden you can't get enough of it. So to me, it's exciting. And so I'm glad that I did finally, give them the shot that they deserved. And then JSK also surprised me. I go along with June was as far as the brand goes, because, honestly, I thought most of what Risty was doing was goofy and weird, and I didn't really like the whole thing. But this year, I sort of turned a corner with him. I like the Tyrannical Buck a lot. I'm not a Nugs guy. I'll probably never smoke one, but it's a pretty genius move. I mean, he's sort of positioning himself really well in the market the way it is, with CBD and that kind of stuff. So kudos to him for having the foresight that I certainly didn't.
Yeah. How about you, Ben? Surprises for the year?
Probably for me, well, one we mentioned was the San Pedro. That cigar, it's really good for its price point. It seems to be doing very, very well out in the market. A lot more than I kind of expected, but it's doing well. And I kind of hope it stays that way with the acquisition of that company. The other one would probably be Miami Cigars with their reintroduction of the Nessa Miranda Special Selection and the reintroduction of the Dalino Africa. That's two that I smoked way back in the day, kind of have a soft spot in my heart for. And to see those reintroduced and people kind of latching onto them, like, it's pretty good. They did really good with both those blends. I think it's really, really good.
Right. Yeah, for me, Seth mentioned Altadis earlier, and especially the Henry Clay Warhawk, I thought was a really nice cigar this year. That Henry Clay's kind of has its kind of rugged profile to it, and this was a slightly different. Still had the broadleaf in it as the binder, but it was a bit of a kind of a more refined, smoother profile for me. And then I'll pile on to the JSK thing, the Tyrannical Bucks. Definitely the Maduro for me was a hit over the Connecticut, and then I will agree exactly with Eric. Is the Nugs is not my thing. I've tried both the Habano and the Maduro, but CBD is lost on me. I don't really have any itch to want to do anything with it. I don't know that it does anything from a cigar, but seemed to catch fire, on social media and things like that. So people
Catch
are
fire, pretty
all
clever.
into it. So yeah, so I think that's a pretty good, it's pretty good a year for him, and looks like he has a lot of stuff planned for 2020. So I think he's got the fuck the FDA cigar coming out. So that's a bold move. We'll see how that kind of plays out for him and gains him any more attention from them. All right, so let's talk about some disappointments, and this is also could be individual cigars, could be brands. I know you're fired up, John. John left. He's supposed to be fired up. He's supposed to be the first one to go. All right, anybody want to jump in on this, or I'll get started?
He was so pissed.
I know. I'll get started if you guys want me to fire up some of these.
Go, Aaron, go.
All right. So a couple cigars that really disappointed me were the Artesano Still Tobacco Viva La Vida. There was some buzz about the cigar going on, and I smoked it. I'll just speak for myself. The other Developing Palate guys can speak on their behalf, but man, there was nothing. I didn't find anything good about the cigar at all. It was just a complete miss. And I know it plays high on the consensus. I just don't understand it. So that was a pretty big disappointment for me, especially with what people had been saying about it. And another cigar that I didn't find that enjoyable was the JRE Aladino Connecticut. It just was it was just so far on the kind of the negative side of what people complain about in regards to Connecticut shades, and it just wasn't appealing to me at all. So
that's a good one, Aaron. I didn't even think of that one, and I love pretty much everything JRE does.
Right.
In fact, to me, just the basic JRE Corojo is amazing.
Right.
Like I like it almost better than like the Reserva and everything else.
Yeah.
And I kind of forgot about the Connecticut, and so that's a good one. It wasn't a terrible cigar by any stretch, but I was like, I guess like my expectations were so high that when I did smoke it, that was a bit of a disappointment too.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the cigars they put out are very good, and then you have a high expectation for something. So I really enjoy Connecticut Shade cigars. So I was like, all right, I want to see what they can do with Connecticut Shade. See that it was just a miss for me. All right, who's next? John, you ready to go?
Yeah, I'm disappointed that you and June keep smoking cigars that show up on the top 25, and I don't get a crack at them. It's really starting to chap my ass. I'm not even gonna lie. The Warhawk was like top of the list. You guys are like, oh, you really got to try this Warhawk. It's so good. It's like because I'm turning it down. Like, is that why?
Right.
And then the Crux Salamone, which conveniently showed up on the list. It's like that's nice. That's nice. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
That was a good Salamone.
I've heard that.
I enjoyed it.
I'll never know, but I've heard that. So that's the only negative thing I have to say.
You didn't have any negative cigars or negative brands this year?
Just Baca.
Okay.
Just Baca.
Yeah.
It was on my surprises for good, and it was on my surprises for bad because it was really, really good in Vegas. And so I was like, man, I can't wait to get home and smoke this. I'm so excited. And it's just, we'll get into it later in the show, but I think it's just that whole November release thing. Like, it just drives me bonkers. Like, I just wish that we could get the cigars released earlier in the year, and then by the time we get around to reviewing them, that they're kind of ready. Because I don't think the review did any service to the cigar. I think it's better than the review. So, because I smoked a bunch of them and they were better than the review. So, yeah. Disappointing.
Can I hop on that one just real quick?
Go for it.
I had gotten some samples at the show. And one of the ones I got was a big Vitola. It was a big ring gauge, much larger, and it was phenomenal.
Phenomenal.
Baca? This is the Toro?
Yeah, this is the Baca, yeah.
Dude, the Toro was fantastic.
It was, and I was for sure like, you know what? This is going to be
top dog.
This is going to be our top dog. You know? This is going to be our best cigar. It's fantastic. But then when we got the actual release ones in that small form factor, I don't know. It just didn't. There wasn't enough to it to make it interesting. And I don't know. I was so disappointed. That's, to me, one of the reasons why I think people think that this was an off year, because there was cigars like Minilec and the Baca that everybody had these super high expectations for. So then when they were just okay, and there's nothing wrong with the Baca by any stretch, but it was just okay, then it seemed like you just like scraped the top off of all the excitement. And now, okay, now where do we go from there? And then that made it seem like it was like an off year. And it kind of was an off year too. But that sort of made it seem worse because everybody thought, oh, Baca's going to probably be number one. Minilec's probably going to be up there. And neither one of them were that interesting.
Sure. All right, who wants to go next? June.
Does discontinued brands count?
Sure.
Like, for instance, I'm pretty bummed Cornelius and Anthony's no more. They had some fantastic stuff coming out for the last, 2-3 years. And that's the stuff that they came out with were some of my favorite Espinosa stuff that came out. So that was a real bummer. I thought when they decided not to, exist anymore. So
exist anymore. That's man.
They decided to cash out and say fuck it.
Best way to put it, man.
They didn't even cash out. They just evaporated.
Probably.
Middle of the night.
Dude, I've thought about driving up to seeing them. They're only like an hour and a half.
You know what?
North of me. So
the thing about their cigars is I was thinking like,
and see them.
I was like, hey, maybe I could go find some that's like super fire sale discounted, but there's like no stock out there. So
no, my store discounted a bit. I mean, I have some like Daddy Max and some of the stuff just like sitting around. I'll get around to. I text Courtney every once in a while smoking one of them. She's like, oh.
Yeah.
So, whatever.
All right, Seth, any disappointments for you this year?
I didn't know about all the hype going into Viva La Vida, so I wasn't disappointed by it. and then I was more probably encouraged by like the people who were hyping this, and you're smoking, you're like, are you all on crack? And then I realized we have a huge drug epidemic across this country. So yeah, maybe they are on heroin. So I don't know. But the Aganorsa, I think the Corojo Maduro, I don't think the wrapper, that tobacco is like fully ready yet. And I think it's kind of not been one of the cigars made in my top 25, but I don't think it's there yet. I had a lot of hype going into that. Baca, I think, was a bummer because I was hesitant at first, and I smoked the IPSPR samples, and they're really good. And then afterwards, they weren't as solid. But, to counter that for Skip, the Neanderthal LH just blew me out of the water. I was shocked how much I love that cigar.
Yeah. How about you, Ben? Any disappointments that you experienced this year?
I mean, yes, several, but the one that really comes to mind the most probably is, for me, is the Tatawahi Mexican Experiment cigars.
Okay.
I just didn't care for them.
Right.
None of them, either one or the two. I mean, that's the ones I thought I would actually love the most. And maybe I hyped myself up too much, thinking it would be way more than they really were. But to me,
Right.
it just wasn't my thing.
Yeah.
Ben, the M2's, it's a good cigar, dude. Come on. That's a really good cigar.
Dude, what did we give? What did I give that, Aaron? Did I kill?
I think you and I scored it exactly the same. I think we both gave it a 6.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't blown away. I think there's a lot of hype to it. But like the Cajon, have you smoked the Cajon 2003, the Serial, the little short Robusto?
Fantastic.
It's fantastic.
Yeah,
it's amazing. The
that
stuff coming out
amazing.
It's really got nailed down. I think stuff coming out of Nicaragua, just not so much. But that's not just at him though. That's everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else will chime in on for disappointments? All right, we can start talking about some trends from the year. So I don't know that there's any real traction to this, but we kind of been busting each other's balls in kind of our media chats around if this is a year of the Connecticut or the year of the Maduro. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on this or want to chime in to their thoughts, or maybe pick another rapper.
I want to do a hand raise.
Okay.
To see how many people think Connecticut's were better than Maduro.
All right.
Overall.
Who thought Connecticut's were better than Maduro's this year?
Oh yeah.
All right, there you go. It's unanimous. Too bad Coop's not here because he'd be the only dissenter.
Yeah, that's for you, Coop.
There's the consensus we needed all year.
There you go.
So I mean, the only notes I have on this is that what I liked about it, because I think, back in 2013, 2014, 2015, we kind of saw a bunch of what I would call boutique style Connecticut's. So they're kind of up strength Connecticut's, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I mean, it's like when people talk about Candela and they're like, well, the best Candela is the one that doesn't taste like a Candela. And it's like, well, then, what's the point? And to me, if you're going to move a Connecticut so far outside of the profile of what a Connecticut is, at that point, it's like, well, why is it a Connecticut? And I thought this year, all of the Connecticut's really that performed quite well on all the top lists, they all stayed within that range of what a Connecticut is. You could hand that to a Connecticut smoker and they'd be like, oh man, this is a really good Connecticut. So it was nice to see so many brands manage to, really knock it out of the park without just being a paint by numbers, bitter, grassy hay kind of experience.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think there was a lot of good Connecticut shade cigars out this year. I mean, you got Desert Rose, the Tyrannical Buck Connecticut. A lot of people liked it. I didn't care for it all that much. There was a number of good, Connecticut shades out this year, and I just think it was definitely a majority more than what was happening on the Maduro side for the year. So I think it's good anytime Connecticut can do well, just because I think there's a lot more smokers that actually smoke that than smoke some of the heavier stuff. I mean, I guess on the more boutique side, it'll lean more towards Maduros, but the actual cigar buyers, the bulk of them are buying Connecticut's. So
I mean, I think the number is like 60 to 70% of cigars sold are probably like Connecticut shade.
Yeah.
So the Connecticut Reserve is what crafted the boutique, man. Oliva, Connecticut Reserve.
Yep. And then you got the Hoya, got some other ones out there. So it was a pretty good group. So it was nice.
Don't forget the Sober Mesa, baby.
Sober Mesa. Hey, man, that was.
I went through a Sober Mesa stage
man.
in the summer where I think I smoked 10 in a row or something. Okay.
Who's that by again? The Sober Mesa? I've never heard of it. Who makes that? It
definitely to me tasted like it had some sort of sweetened tip, but I didn't care. It was good, and
I don't care about the sweetened tip part.
Yeah, I don't think it's a big deal. I think people just took people just thought they needed to be up in arms about it, but it's just really no big deal.
They just want to know.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Exactly. Right.
But I mean, look, you can take the cigar, you can put your tongue on the wrapper towards the foot, and you can put your tongue on the wrapper towards the head, and there's a difference. Let's just say. But I mean, when you're smoking it, there's not really. It's very subtle, right? if you even detect it at all. It's really just.
I had a couple that were a little bit more than subtle.
It's possible, yeah. I guess
Yeah.
that'd be true.
Cuevas Connecticut Reserve or Natural Reserve. That's a great Connecticut too. That was really severe. That flew under the radar.
Yeah. What other Connecticut's were nice hits this year?
Well, man, we gave Numero Uno the #1 cigar of the year. That's
there you go.
To me.
Yeah, I mean, I think
fantastic cigar.
Hoya.
Nicaragua did a fantastic job.
John, did you smoke that one?
The Hoya or the Numero Uno?
Numero Uno?
No, it's on my review list for tomorrow, and it's going to be my birthday cigar.
Well, it's really good.
Yeah.
Good for you for smoking in 2020, man.
That's right. So I roll, baby.
Any Maduros that jump out for you guys?
Well, I mean, John, remember my Connecticut from Davidoff? That was marvelous.
You know what? That might have been one of my top 5 Connecticut's.
We should have put that as the #1. I think.
Yeah.
My Davidoff Connecticut.
Seth's Private Blend Connecticut. It's one of the rarer releases too, so it wouldn't have made Coop's list because it's
Eladio was on the
exclusive.
floor sweating, man.
Yeah.
Maduros, I think it was a good year for
Maduros.
Mexican San Andreas. I think if you look at the
was-
Maduros, they succeeded. Mexican San Andreas.
Oh, that Villiger one. I thought was pretty good. That you and I liked it, Seth.
The Black Forest.
Yeah, Mexican
liked
San
it.
Andreas.
It was tasty.
Oh, John too.
Remember me? I review cigars from time to time.
It was a cool name too, man.
Yeah.
What was the name? Black Forest, Dark Forest.
Black Forest.
Quaylar.
Goylar.
Quaylar Black
Yeah,
Forest.
that cigar is fantastic.
Yeah, I smoked that, Ben, and I don't know why, man. This really sounds personal, but sometimes when I smoke a cigar, you just come to mind, man. I don't know what's going on.
Well, that's not
I
fucking weird.
I should just tell you more often what the cigar is. I think that's what it is. I'm like, man, I bet Ben would like the cigar. I think that's what it is. I'm gonna think.
Well, you were right on that one for
Yeah.
sure.
There's a couple of mini trends, Aaron. Mini
Okay.
trends.
All right.
Cameroon, right?
Cameroon.
Baca, you got Warzone coming out.
Right.
Yeah.
And then a couple cigars had Medio Tiempo wrappers, which is interesting, right? You
Right,
had Lustrum and the H. Upman 175.
Yep.
That was kind of interesting that they both came out the same year.
Right,
Both of those
right.
were really good cigars.
Yep. And a very fascinating way to get that wrapper done.
Right,
is,
yeah.
All that stuff.
I
I'll
forgot
throw out,
about, Lustrum. Yeah, that's right.
I'll throw out another Maduro that made a couple of our lists was the La Aurora 1985 Maduro.
That's
very
a great
good, very
cigar.
good
Yeah.
value level cigar, right? So
You consistently make the best price cigars for the taste.
Who's this?
La Aurora.
I think La Aurora is the one of the few companies that knows how to use tobacco from everywhere.
mhm.
They're up there with Royal Agio, Drew Estate. They know how to make a blend with a lot of different types of tobacco.
Right. And then John,
Did
you
you guys smoke that LFD 25th?
not yet.
Oh man,
Yeah, no, yeah.
Good.
it's really good.
It tastes like typical LFD. Like, you know what I mean? Like they have a very distinct
Yeah, it's sort of
profile.
it kind of reminds me of like a condensed version of an LFD, like it's
Oh
really
wow!
syrupy and deep.
Mm.
And that was one that like towards the end of the year when we start to do our list, we just start buying all the ones that we didn't get a chance to smoke. And so that one like took me by surprise. We have like all these cigars that we have to just try, and you don't know like, am I going to like this or not? It should be good, but that one was really, really good. I highly recommend giving that a shot.
Nice. All right, John. I think you put this item in the list about more new releases, less line extensions, kind of testing out the FDA waters. Was that you that put it in there?
Yeah, that was me. So essentially, I just wanted to, kind of one of the trends I thought I was seeing this year was last year, we really, I thought last year was everyone had a line extension. Everyone had a Vitola extension, but it was all, based on pre-existing product. There was no quote unquote really new releases per se. At least it seemed that the amount of new releases was very, very small. And I felt like this year was definitely a 180-degree shift. You had new companies coming out, which, kind of didn't make a lot of sense to me. Why are you launching a new company in this environment? But hey, more brands is good. And it seemed like everybody had a new product. I mean, the fact that Roma Craft, which is kind of a slow and steady company, they're consistently releasing new extensions, just building on well-established brands. And out of nowhere, Skip's like, no, I'm just going to make a new cigar. I'm going to make a Cameron Baca. And it's like, wow, okay, that's cool, but wasn't expecting that to be an American, like everyone was saying, is that going to be European only, et cetera, et cetera. And that seemed to be a trend, at least in my mind. What does everyone on the panel think of that?
Thoughts, guys?
Starting with Eric.
I think that's the stupidest topic I've ever heard. No, I'm just kidding.
The hate is real.
No, you don't. You think
No, you make a good point. I didn't really think about it, but yeah, that is a good point. Like there was like a war. Here we go, Cameroon again, but Warzone was another. Just out of nowhere, and was a bit of a surprise. So yeah, that is a good point. Yeah, I agree.
I think everyone's just rolling the die, man. I think they're just maybe it's I don't know. They're just like fuck it, or it's like Russian roulette. They're like, you know what? Someone's gonna get caught. Maybe it won't be me though. There's a lot of us.
Yeah. But when the first one does get caught, then we'll see a domino effect, right? People fall.
One would hope. One would hope. One would hope. But you never know.
Do you guys think there's possibly some behind the scenes predicate stuff going on? Like people are, testing the waters by sort of releasing something that they believe is based on a predicate blend, and they're just waiting to be challenged on it so they can prove that?
Well, I mean, look at Oya de Numero Uno is really not new. I mean,
here we go, Cameron.
That was weird.
That's right. Ben's checking in on Facebook or something.
Oh, okay. I was like,
that's
tripping. So
I thought it was muted.
Yeah. So I mean, like Numero Uno, and then you also have like the Antonio Connecticut, because Juan even talked about they tried the Antonio Connecticut years ago. So they probably still said, yeah, we have it on the books.
Yeah. I don't think it hurts anybody. I mean, they can start throwing out stuff or, reintroducing these blends that they have, gone away from in the past. And, it's time to get the bulk of them out there so that you have a lot of stuff ready to go in if some deeper regulations pop in. So.
I mean, if maybe just be like, oh, listen, hey, we thought we had in this book that was predicate. We'll just stop doing this for you. We're sorry.
Right.
FTO back. All right, that's easy. Next.
Here you go. All right, so let's get to one. I guess it's more of a trend for maybe 2020 and going forward, but we'll take a shot at it right here. So with TPE coming up, there's a lot more companies that are going to be exhibiting there than in previous years. And we've seen some companies that are pulling out of PCA that are going to be exhibiting at TPE. Does anybody think that we're going to see a shift of release dates, that more cigars are going to be released earlier in the year rather than where they're typically at least introduced or released, which is around the kind of July timeframe?
No.
Think it'll stay about the same?
I think I think people will go to. I think people are testing the water with TPE this year because it's cheap, and then they'll see what's going on. I mean, it's just it's an industry of tradition in so many senses that when you think of like new cigars, it's summertime. People are going on vacation. People are going to the beaches. That's when a lot of people, most people who are not nerds will start smoking. So put some new releases out there when they're on vacation or they're going to the beach, stuff like that. That's my theory on it.
And you have a different thought? I have a different thought than that.
I don't have a different thought. I agree with Seth. I don't think if we do see a shift, I don't think it's going to be this year. I think it'd be next year after people have sort of decided whether the TPE is for them or not, and then whether they come crawling back to the PCA or not. But I would certainly like to see a lot more releases front loaded in the year, because I gotta say, backloading releases into November is extremely frustrating to try and get those at the retail level, get a review in, get it, written up, and then include it within the artificial time frame that we've established for ourselves for the top 25 cigars of the year. And that process would be a lot easier if, even 10 or 15% of those releases were shifted to the first 3 months of the year versus the last 2 months of the year.
There's also got to be a cycle of, product launch and the marketing behind it and getting all of that ready, right? In which most of those companies are doing it within the summertime frame. So if you want to shift to, a completely different season, that out is probably pretty, there's probably a lot to it to roll that out, right?
Most factories close in like December.
All December, yeah.
Yeah, they're closed. So there's no point in trying to release a new product at the beginning of the year. You know, you got to get the people back in there, get them rolling. That's probably when I'd have to ask Skip, but I guarantee if you ask Skip, typically when would he or any of these people, when you introduce new blends, I bet it's something they work on in the quote unquote off season.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're probably doing it year round, but that's when they're focusing on it.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, something new.
Any thoughts, Eric?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on how much this TPE thing, you know, how is it going to be the me-we of Facebook, or is it going to actually, you know, is it actually going to be something that, you know, a lot of people start shifting to? It sort of seems like it'll be like a popular for a bit, and then maybe it'll shift back. I suppose it depends on, you know, what PCA does and what their moves are, and if they're smart and can pull this back together, and or if not, if they can't, then it'll probably move to TPE, and companies will just have to adjust. They'll have to do their blends after everybody gets back, but then they just won't release it until the next year. You know, I don't know.
Any thoughts on that, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it all does depend on TPE. I just don't see that really being the answer everybody thinks it's going to be, because I think with all this going on with PCA, I think one it'll be kind of a wake up call for them, and they'll get this worked out to where, like the big four that pulled out will be back. I'm pretty positive about that. I don't think TPE is going to be as popular as everybody thinks it might be. So I don't think shifting any releases to earlier in the year for TPE will be a thing. It's just my theory.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've never owned a retail store, but I have no problem sharing my uneducated opinion on the matter. But I would think that, you know, some nice Q1 releases would help out by getting the cigars into the retailer's hands when the weather starts warming up, rather than kind of a July release or announcement, and then the cigars show up in September or October when the weather starts turning on the, you know, the East Coast or the Northeast. But you know, I don't know. I mean, the retailers would really have to be the guys that kind of dictate that, and I would think that the manufacturers could kind of, you know, provide whatever the retailers were looking for. If the timing shifted and that's the way it worked, maybe it works out. And I think we all know, you know, going into the trade show in July, companies are like, you know, last second getting bands and boxes put together for these cigars to even make it to the show. So maybe if you had a month of December where you can't actually produce anything, it forces you to be a little bit more proactive in getting stuff done by the end of November, so it's ready to show in January. But that's just
they'd still find a way to do it last minute. Are you kidding me?
that's just wishful thinking on my
Wishful
part,
thinking.
I guess.
Gives them more time to think about how not to do something.
Exactly. So that would be my thoughts on it, I guess. All right. So let's talk about some interesting stories from 2019. I know, Eric, when you had Coop and I on your show, you had a nice list of 30. So I'm not going to go to that level and kind of rehash your show. But we have a few, I think, that are, you know, some of the bigger ones. And you were a bit involved in the first one that we have on the list, which is kind of the Avo marketing dust up that happened in Florida. So and that was Avo announcing that this unexpected series was actually regular production releases that were just kind of rebanded in this fashion, but not disclosed to anybody kind of until they did this big reveal on your show, Eric. And I think I mentioned on your show, I felt a little bit bad for you being kind of put in that position, you know, that you know, I you know, and you can share whatever you want on it or not, but I don't think you went into it knowing that this is what was going to happen when you went down to Florida. I think they invited you down to do a show talking about this blend, and I think you kind of just maybe found out kind of on the spot. Am I off base there at all?
No, that's totally true.
All right.
But you know, I mean, it was interesting, you know, and you know, at the very end of the show, you know, it all started to kind of percolate in my head, and that's sort of when I asked, "Hey, are you guys worried that, you know, what people are gonna think of this? Are you nervous about that?" And they answered the question, and Lana said that she thought, yeah, some people probably will be, da 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 da. And so, I mean, I guess, sometimes I say to myself, it's really not that big a deal. It was, maybe executed, maybe wrong. I think that ultimately people don't like a gotcha, right?
Right.
Even if it's a good gotcha,
Yeah.
like they could say like, hey, you guys didn't know this, but every box that you bought of this comes with a gold coin underneath.
Right.
People might get mad about that. Like getting a gotcha sometimes just makes people mad anyways, let alone the type of gotcha.
Right.
And so I totally see that that point. And then and obviously it made some people madder than others, and it's just one of those things, that I don't know. I'm guessing that they would probably do it differently next time. I don't know.
Sure.
Who knows?
All right, I'm sure you guys have opinions on this, so let's kind of open it up
Seth
to
has no
anybody that
opinion
wants to
on
jump in.
the Avo.
Yeah.
I think the most entertaining about it was, I don't know, less than a week. Eddie was up at Havana Phil's, and he and I were just, and he walked into it. He wasn't even a part of the whole thing.
Right. It was his initiation, right?
Yeah. So we were just joking, and then he's like, "Hey, can I get a photo of you smoking an Avo unexpected?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." Yeah, why not? So, I mean, I think I would have done it differently. I think I know what they're trying to do, and Eddie explained it to me multiple times, and I'm like, dude, I pissed off my local Davidoff reps, and they were calling me and whatever. It was entertaining. So, I understand their intentions. I think it was a mistake in how they did it.
Sure.
John, I think charging more for it probably wasn't a smart idea either.
Yeah. I've heard different things that it was more, and then some people said it was the same price. So I didn't do much investigation in regards to
Guess
that.
what happened from what Davidoff told me was that the Davidoff website was discounting Avos. And it just happened to be at the time when they announced all these things.
Got it.
And the Avo Unexpecteds were classified as limited editions, and they never discount their limited editions. So those had like the higher prices, something like that.
Okay.
But I guess through my little Facebook comment, I got a couple people in the IT department or whoever handles that for Davidoff yelled at pretty bad. So
it's pretty funny. What was it? Jeff blew out his stock of
Jeff
of that too.
pissed.
Yeah, he was pretty livid. I found that pretty funny. I mean, I'm sure he didn't think it was funny, but it was entertaining for me. Didn't buy any, but whatever.
There's a couple people I saw who did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that was kind of a textbook example of, from a marketing perspective, how to do one thing to piss off multiple groups of people simultaneously with what seems like an innocent, from their perspective, seems like an innocent move. And then you go back and you go, oh yeah, I can see why people would be very upset about that. So it was kind of surprising to see a company like Davidoff, who's typically a very traditional company and really doesn't make waves throughout the year. And I turn on Facebook and see just a brouhaha, and I'm like, what is going on? Yeah. And it was truly unexpected.
Yep. Do you guys think there's any kind of long-term damage from this, or is this kind of like the typical kind of cigar riff where it's like a 2 week wave, and then everybody forgets about it and moves on to whatever else they're doing?
Listen, man, you're gonna stop carrying Davidoff at your store? I mean,
it's completely gone. And whatever point some of these retailers are trying to make, more than likely Davidoff was like, all right, what is it that you want?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay.
I know Eric ripped on me pretty good about my saying that Davidoff looked like they're in trouble, but I mean, come on, man. It's Davidoff. Like,
right.
It's one of the 3 brands that you're always going to be carrying in your store if you can. Long term, no. Even midterm, I don't think it's going to really hurt the company that much.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? Attend PCA and complain to them about it?
Yeah. So I'll move that one up, because you talk about it like, all right, so you have this little dust up with Avo, but then the whole company just decides, all right, we're just not going to show up at PCA. So this is bigger news anyway. So Avo thing is forgotten. Now you have this other thing to complain about. So the big 4 pull out of PCA 2020. go for thoughts on that one. Is this a big deal, or is this a small deal?
This is gonna get resolved by 2021.
Yeah, you think it's just a sitting out your senior year kind of thing? Go pro next year.
It's it's like that little boyfriend girlfriend dispute, and then they just start complaining about girlfriend starts complaining about the boyfriend to all of her friends, and he's complaining about his girlfriend to all their friends, and then next thing you know, there's a party and they're going to be back hooking up together. So
yeah.
They'll be back.
How do you think it's going to get remedied, Seth?
Give and take from both parties, like sausages and laws. Not pretty.
Chipper booth fees.
Yeah, everyone's going to get a little something.
Yeah. I mean, I think if I understand the economics of it, I mean, really, it's not the PCA's portion of the trade show that's expensive. It's the unionized, and I don't mean to crap on unions. So before everyone just loses it and starts emailing me, let me finish.
Oh, unions.
Yeah, when you're charging $6,000 for a 30 square foot section of carpet, I mean, you got to say, like, look, you're driving the trade show out when you charge those kinds of rates. When you're charging, what is it, $3,500 to take a scissor lift and hang a banner? Like, listen, man, and like everyone loves to get the money out of the big guys, but those are the costs that are increasing year over year, and that's really, I think where a bulk of those, like I think Saka was saying, the electrical went from like $1,700 or $1,800 to like $2,350. Like, come on, man! Like that, you can't be charging these guys these kinds of rates. I mean, obviously, you can't because a bunch of the big exhibitors dropped out. I'm sure there's going to be some discussion about what they're paying for their booth space, but a lot of that expense is not coming from the PCA side. That's coming from the labor in Las Vegas.
Right. I mean, in defense of unions, would you really want to put up a banner for Skip? No.
Some guys.
I mean,
I
do it for free samples, man, because that's all I do.
Dude, I'm not getting on a scissor lift for Skip.
Give me those free samples. Give me those Neanderthals, man. I'll get up on that scissor lift. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I think part of it too was, it's a communication issue too between PCA and the companies as well.
Oh yeah.
It didn't seem like there was good communication between anybody. Or they think PCA will do something and not even ask their members, or they had this little mini internal cabal inside that they talk to decide everything for the PCA. And you just can't do that. You can't alienate your own members.
Yeah.
Like that.
Well,
that was one big issue.
I'm going to say this since I know Scott's live on another show and he's never going to see this. I mean, I think you couldn't have had a worse lead up and launch of this last IPCPR/PCA. You had the worst possible timing. Your communication was complete garbage. You announced an initiative that, gets all the retailers up in arms and gets a significant number of the exhibitors up in arms. And then top it off to sort of flick the ash in your eye. You give people paper badges without the plastic cover on them. It's just like, are you like, tell me you're not intentionally trying to get people to not come to the show, because it seems like, oh right, and then you send an email to all the bloggers to say, yeah, you don't really like you. I mean, I know that's not the case, but you take all those things and you compound them one after another. I mean, that was just the worst execution across the board. It's kind of a wonder that they didn't lose more exhibitors, frankly, based on that performance. It was pretty bad.
Yeah, I think we'll see as the year goes along who decides that they're still going, who actually decides that they're not. I think there's still a fair number of companies that are up in the air in regards to what they're going to do.
Where would I find that out if I wanted to check that information, Aaron?
I mean, we have a scoreboard up on the site, so you can check it out. But I'm still waiting for an updated list from PCA on who they have locked in. So I'll get that. Should have that updated probably by the end of the week.
So if a company wanted to let you know whether they were in or out for a PCA, how would they do that?
I mean, you could do a press release, I guess, or you could do, the industry can do 50 press releases in the course of 4 or 5 days. But that's cool. Hey. It's good communication, I guess, for everybody. So, any thoughts on the Big Four pulling out, Eric? I know you just popped back in, but
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, I think that the way PCA responded was not good. I mean, I've made this point clear that they obviously knew this was going to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it would have been, I think one of the pillars of how to handle a crisis like this is like immediate response. Like that's number one. That is the number one thing on how to handle a media crisis. And they didn't respond. In fact, they didn't respond until 12 hours later, like during my show,
Right.
when and so like they should have had some sort of response, like ready to go, like, hey, Fuente, JC Newman, all these other companies, and here's another thing that I didn't like about their response was, and I haven't said this on air anywhere, so not that this is a big deal, but that they should have just owned it and said, like, this is devastating to us. We really wish this hadn't have happened. We're really trying to work with these guys. We don't want this to go on. But obviously we have to trudge forward. It's better for the, it's too bad that there's division in the thing, but we really want these guys. We really want to work it out with them. Go ahead and just own it instead of just sort of like downplaying or poo-pooing the fact that the big four left. It was almost like, they only have 12% of the floor space. So
Right.
what's the big deal? Why is everybody freaking out? I mean, we can go on, hey, look, this is the big four. You should have, I think, just, tried to get some sympathy on your side by saying, try to work this out. I wish this hadn't have come to this. I wish these guys would change their mind. And then maybe people would have been a little more sympathetic. But when you sort of poo-poo it as if, these four don't really matter, the trade show is going to go on regardless, and sort of paint this picture as everything's still rosy and good, that was just a bad look, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree with that. That was the most baffling thing that I read in that response. Was like, it was almost like he was like, oh, well, we don't really care. We're going to do what we want to do anyway.
Exactly. It was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to clarify a couple things. I said unions, and I knew there was going to be comments. I should have specifically said the Las Vegas Convention Center was reasonably affordable compared to the Sands, but the Sands wants to gouge you for everything you're worth. And it looks like my comments definitely struck a chord with some brand owners, because they're chiming in at some of the costs. Riste mentioned he really appreciated the $2,300 a day expense just to have an espresso next to his booth. So he said that was good value. So it sounds like I hit the nail on the head with that one.
Yeah.
Hey man, it was probably pretty. Was it good espresso? Did he have it?
I mean, I feel like a jerk now because I didn't realize the guy was paying. I was like, man, if you're paying $2,300 a day, I should have come by and had a couple of espressos and maybe smoked a tyrannical buck.
Yeah.
Did Logan pour coffee last year?
No.
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was crazy. I remember being at the tap booth and Pete telling me that, he had that little bowl of candy sitting on the table. And I think like it was like 2 cases of the little small bottles of water that had the Tatuaje logo on it. And they came to hassled him hard about having the stuff in there, not buying it through the food provider there. And they were going to fine him like a crazy amount of money because he had some little mini bars of like chocolates and stuff. I just thought that was insane. I mean, PCA doesn't need to let that kind of stuff go on. I mean, and like United, I remember being at the United booth and they had an electrical issue and they didn't want to come out and fix it until after 5 o'clock where they could charge them double time to fix the electrical issue.
Right.
That's the kind of stuff that PCA needs to get a hold of and stop that too. I mean, I don't know what they can do about it, but try. Do something. Show them that you care, and I don't know.
We gotta leave Vegas.
I forget, you guys. Did AJ's booth fire happen at the Sands or the Convention Center?
It was a convention
center. Yeah.
Can you imagine if it happened at Sands?
Dude, those firefighters would have been charging like $500 a minute. It's crazy.
Oh my gosh!
You think that they would have even had the show the same day at the Sands, or they would have canceled the day, right?
Probably, yeah.
I would think so too. Yeah, they'd find a way to make some big whole day thing about it. So, All right, let's talk about Tobacco 21. So that kind of got slipped in, kind of, in the night, kind of a thing where you just wake up the next morning and Tobacco 21 is there, and there was no vote necessary for this to happen, and not a lot of push from any of the uh, teams that are trying to fight for the consumer rights or anything like that. So what are your guys' thoughts on how Tobacco 21 got implemented and what its kind of repercussions are gonna be on the industry, if any?
I've got a little statement prepared, and then I'll let you guys do it because I feel like as the conscious Canadian, I have the experience of getting reamed by federal and provincial anti-tobacco legislation. So I kind of see the writing on the wall, and I've noticed within the last 6 months, and this is a little shout out to Half Wheel because they're one of the few sites, I think maybe the only site that consistently reports on park bans, smoking bans, um, you know, uh, bans that are labor bans related to you can't work for the city or you can't work for whatever organization if you're smokers. And a number of people said, well, I don't care about this stuff. And it's like, yeah, you don't care until it comes to your city, and then all of a sudden it becomes your problem. And these people who are saying they don't care, these are the people who are going to wake up in 8 to 10 years and then they go, well, how come I have no place to smoke? How come all the lounges are closed? And how come my cigars cost $20? And it's like, well, because legislation like Tobacco 21 keeps getting pushed through, and there's really, I don't want to throw the legislative bodies under the bus because I think, they're trying, but unfortunately, trying isn't getting it done. And when Tobacco 21 goes through, especially on a federal level, I mean, it's bad enough as going through on a state level, but that goes through on a federal level. Well, now you've just got another piece of legislation that's opened the door a little bit more to allow additional anti-tobacco legislation to go through in the future. You've just made it easier for the next round of legislation. So, that's my feelings.
Thoughts from you guys on that?
Yeah, they just keep creeping in at you, right, Seth? They take one thing and the government, then they go for the next thing, right? It just doesn't stop.
I don't know why this was at me, man.
You were getting ready to chime in, it sounded like.
No, I mean, I was just going to say, the cigar industry should have been prepared for this years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, they just didn't want to do anything for a long time. So that's unfortunate.
Crazy thing, they're already talking about raising the age again. I mean, that's
Yeah.
insane.
How are they? Jeez.
Do you think that, like in regards to retail sales, does have it going from an 18 to a 21 starting point? Do you think that has a big effect on, bulk sales or anything like that?
I think it affects probably some stores. I think if you probably have you have a mom and pop shop in like a college town, right, and it's really, that's what it is. I bet you that is a huge factor on your business.
Yeah, but I think also military bases too.
Yeah, probably
like my shop in Biloxi, Mississippi, right? So it's right sandwiched in between a Navy base and an Air Force base. We have a lot of the Air Force base in particular is a training base. So you'll have a lot of the Air Force, they get a basic training and whatever they call AIT, I forgot what it's called. And then they come to the Keesler Air Force Base and do their training for whatever their MOS will be, right? And their lifetimes are 18, 19 years old. And we'll get a lot of those kids coming to the cigar shop, and they're, they want, try a cigar. Usually they'll come in for a flavored cigar or an acid or whatever. And then they'll see the old guys in there, smoking different things. They're like, hey, what's that? I'm going to try that one next. And all of a sudden, you got a pretty good little crew of these, young military people coming there smoking, and then they'll transition out. Come in with a new bunch. So we had a lot of those come in Biloxi. So, I mean, I don't know what it just started, so I don't know what, I haven't been back since the Tobacco 21 started. But I would imagine that would have, hurt them a little bit. So, I don't know. It's just kind of weird. It's Tobacco 21. I mean, when people are talking about like use of military, like, oh, you can go off and fight and die for your country, and
right.
like you can go shoot a 120 millimeter cannon on an M1 Abrams tank and blow somebody up or blow another tank up or whatever, but you can't have a damn cigar. That's just so weird, and I agree with that. But then you can say the same thing for alcohol too.
Right.
I mean, it's 21, and like I said, I was
It's an
watching
outrage.
the day that this happened, I saw on CNN and Fox News talking about raising it to 23 and even 25 years old. That's to me is way crazy.
Right.
But we've got to be prepared, And the worst is hearing people complain about, I can't believe they did this, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but retailers and manufacturers. But what did you do beforehand to stop it?
Right.
What have you done? Have you talked to your, customers and say, hey, look, we should fight about this, email or call your senator or congressman or whatever and complain or say something, make your voice heard. No, you hear a lot of grumbling afterwards, like, I can't believe this happened. Got to be active. Got to stop this stuff at the ground.
Yeah, when I hear
if they made a law that said I couldn't start drinking until I was 35, this state would go to shit pretty fast.
When you hear people say, "Oh, the 18 to 21 base is not it's not going to make a tick in my shop about whatever," that's just a cop out. It's just one of those things like, oh, it doesn't affect you, so you don't care about it, but at some point it's going to reach you, and then you will have a problem with it. So I think you have to take in consideration, is this just right overall, and then kind of make your decision based on that. So yeah, kind of leading or trailing onto that is the flavor bans that are coming out. Various counties and cities are doing these flavor bans, and I'm sure it'll be at state levels at some point, and maybe even make it federal. And I think this would have a bigger effect on the industry overall than the age change, because there's a lot of companies that the flavor side is a bulk of their business, and it's the reason they can produce other cigars. So what are your guys' thoughts on how the flavor bans are kind of playing out?
At the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, I'll throw myself under the bus here. I said that by the end of the year, it was the stone cold lock of the century, the week that California would have a statewide flavored tobacco ban. So that's not happened. So I'll just be the first to say I was wrong. I made a prediction. I was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you do when you make a prediction and you're wrong. But it does seem like the country as a whole is kind of leaning in that direction, and you're kind of seeing that state by state, county by county. And certainly in California, I think they're attacking on a county level,
right,
even at a city level. And the impression that I was left with this year is that a lot of the flavor ban came on the coattails of this vape death hysteria. And I don't want to get too much into that, but that was, talking about legislation that allows the crack in the door. There was this hysteria around, quote unquote vape cartridges, which, as it turns out, shocked anyone who knew what they're talking about. It had nothing to do with vape cartridges, but allowed some states to push through a complete flavor ban that included tobacco, which had nothing whatsoever to do with the original issue, which also had nothing whatsoever to do with vape. And now you've got flavor bans really taking effect across the entire country. So I'll kind of restate my bad prediction from last year, which is I really think the bulk of the United States, like more than 50% of the states, are going to have flavor bans statewide by the end of 2020. And we're joined by none other than Will Cooper. What's going on, Will?
Hey, guys.
Oh, my gosh.
Thank you for joining us, Anna. And you were able to get out of the work thing.
Well, we were done. So, and I'm literally only a walk from where I was. So that's
where
why
are you, Coop?
What?
Where are you? Where
I'm actually in Denver.
Oh, nice. Don't too much.
No, so I do have other business here, so I get out of jail later in the week. So
Nice.
And I do have the diet. Yes, I do have Diet Coke.
A shower right next to the couch and everything.
He stays at European hotels. It's a European.
I don't know what. I can't even see what it is. No, it's lamps.
Your drape looks like a
shower.
Your drape looks like a shower.
There's not a drape. There's not even. Oh yeah, there is a drape.
There is a drape, man. I can see in your room.
That's basically it's a room divider. It's a privacy thing. Yeah, yeah, but there's no one for me to
that way you
partition.
can do a show on. Yeah.
I think Cook's filming some live stuff in there that we might not want to know about.
That's right. You don't have a vacuum machine and some kittens in that room.
No.
Okay.
No, I don't.
See, I was gonna play it. I wasn't gonna go deep like that. I was just gonna say a leather couch, man. Jeez, come on.
So crude. It's just Pornhub Live.
Okay. All right, that's acceptable.
Coop from the Overlook Hotel, man.
So we just got into the flavored tobacco bans, stuff like that. So
yeah, I heard what John said. I agree. The only thing, and I don't know if you hit on it, I know it came in late, but it seems like there's a little more sense of urgency, I think, with PCA on this one. I got the impression they're not going to lie down as easy, but I think they're trying to just be very quiet on this.
Yeah. Any thoughts from you guys on the flavor bans?
Fruit.
It's an easy grab.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of see, they're trying to make the tobacco be like candy, taste like candy, so it appeals to the kids, which is kind of stupid, especially now that you've raised the age of 21. Okay, so now are we going to go after, all the different flavored vodkas too now?
Right.
And all the other alcohol that's flavored like that?
We should.
Because now it's all 21.
We should get rid of that stuff.
Fireball?
It's an insult, man.
Yeah. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Don't
but
give
still,
me
with the whole point,
cream flavored vodka.
PCA has to address this, especially with Drew Estate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the asses will be hammered by this and stuff.
Yeah.
And so they have to address it if they want. For one, they want to repair the rift they got going on right now.
Oh, I mean, Rocky Patel would be hammered by this.
Right, with the Javas and all
those
that.
Javas, man.
Miami Cigar would be hit.
Tatiana would be hit really hard. Swisher. Swisher's going to get hard. Those semi-sweets.
Well, I mean, look at what Swisher's doing right now. They have their own lobbyists for a reason.
Yeah.
They're taking control of this one right now.
Yeah.
And don't forget, like, you look at Altadis in general, you may say, no, they don't have a lot of flavors, but guess what? They have retail operations that sell a lot of flavored cigars.
Yeah.
So,
like Ben was saying, I mean, the whole argument falls on its face because you've now made it 21 and under, so it doesn't matter what's in the cigars. Only quote unquote adults are smoking them. So get out of here with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's ridiculous.
Well, the problem also is that we've made the cases that it's not 21-year-olds, and they're using our past offenses against us now.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, that FDA study that they commissioned clearly showed that and not that anyone in the right mind thought for a second that kids were smoking cigars, because the idea of a kid smoking a cigar is just ridiculous on its face. But the FDA funded a study that proved with their own money, with their own science, that that's not the case. I mean, we knew it wasn't the case, but they've got the science on the books now. So, the whole argument is just stupid. It's just stupid. It's stupid.
Is it stupid?
Stupid.
It's stupid.
Stupid.
Any other interesting industry items that we may have missed that would be worth discussing, or we'll get on to the next topic? All right, let's talk about consensus. So the consensus came out on Monday, and that is basically the pooling of all of or a bunch of the media cigar of the year lists to kind of flesh out, which cigars ranked where and how they all stack up to kind of create a consolidated top 25 list. Anybody have any thoughts on the overall results from the list that they thought were interesting or odd?
But before we shit all over the list, can I just be the one guy that says, thank you very much, Charlie, for all your hard work creating a list. I'm sure it's not easy. I didn't realize until I went through the analytics that it actually included podcasts and obviously a number of YouTubers. So given that I'd imagine that there's not a comment field where they just list all the cigars, he probably had to view a lot of this content to get that information. And I'm sure that's time of his life you wish he could get back. So, thank you for taking one for the collective cigar media and collecting all that data. Have at her, boys.
Yeah, and
What's the whole point of collecting the data?
Yeah, and nothing we say here is
Charlie.
negative towards Charlie or Halfwheel, because he's just the curator of the list. Like, he's not producing the content or anything like that. He's just really collecting the data and reporting on the data. So just for everybody that, I know Charlie understands that, and he knows that we aren't focusing anything on this on him, but just for any of the viewers that, this isn't focused towards them. It's based on the results of the data. So I'll throw that out there as well.
I agree, Aaron, but I think Charlie's got to figure out the direction he wants to take the consensus over the next few years. Because I think, and he's made adjustments to it in the past when he's seen things awry. And I think this year there was some things exposed with the consensus that, and basically I think, one argument you can make is, does it make sense to lump print media, online media, and YouTubers into a list? Because what I saw spit out was a very average list in the end.
Right.
Again, this ain't Charlie's list.
Generous.
There was nothing compelling about this list this year.
Sure.
Well, Charlie said that. I know they're pressed for time, but Charlie even said that in his comments, that there was a clear delineation between YouTubers, cigar media, online cigar media, and podcasts. Like those three distinct groups. YouTubers tended to be, this is what I'm smoking, random cigars that I enjoyed smoking throughout the year, which, that's great, but ultimately isn't really what we're trying to inform the audience about. The podcasters were kind of a mix between new cigars and, hey, I smoked this Herrera Esteli. It's new to me. It's like, well, that's fascinating, but we've all been there, bro. And then the online lists, which were, and obviously we've got a bunch of people who've switched their lists from being new year only or inclusive of last year. And I don't really care one way or the other. But I mean, ultimately, if you've got a list of a 6-year-old cigar, I'm just not sure that list has a lot of value. I mean, from my perspective, I went through the list and I'm like, you might as well have just randomly picked cigars off the shelf, because this list doesn't really have any validity or doesn't really provide any information for me as a consumer. Does it?
Yeah. I mean, you can take old cigars. June, what is it that you said that you smoked all this year because it was a bad year?
Oh, I smoked a ton of Padrones this year.
Smoked a ton of Padrones. Yeah.
Because it was such a bad review year.
Who were left off the top 25
who were left off the top 25.
I must have smoked. I swear to God.
But it's, when was the 1926 released to the market? When was 1964? I mean, all this stuff is late 90s through 2006. So you're already looking at cigars which are 14 years old. So I mean, in that sense, is you're getting a list of cigars which not only performed at the time but have been performing great now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I also feel like it would have been, I mean, I don't really have an issue with the eligible media that got on this list, but it would be nice to get this list stratified, right? So we could do online media, print, YouTubers. I like to see that metric because I think you'll see quite a big difference.
I think, to defend Charlie on that, I think he probably would have done that, but I think he had a very short window to get the consensus done. And I'm sure as he kind of crunched the data over the weekend, it probably didn't come out the way it's come out the last 8 years. So I'm hoping maybe he does a follow-up piece on this. I'd really like to see what you just said, June, how this delineates with this.
Yeah, because it's all really good data. Like
the
this baseline data is great. I just want to see it further stratified, and I think that'll mean quite a bit more.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but he used to do this list to determine the relationship between media and cigar company. I didn't feel this year it reflected that.
Well, there was an interesting commentary at the bottom of the article, which wasn't specifically about online media, but was more a commentary. And I'm not. I just want to say this is taken from the article. This is not my words. So again, don't email me. I'm just saying somebody else's words. But he had commentary that it seemed very striking that print media managed to have 25 different brands of only one cigar repeatedly represented in all of their magazines year over year. And I agree with him as a data analytic guy. Statistically, that's extremely improbable. It's extremely improbable to do it across all the magazines in the marketplace. It's more extremely improbable when you to say you can do that year over year. And I think that was one of the strongest statements he made in his article.
He did say that, yeah.
What was the comment again?
That the magazines would not place multiple cigars from a brand on the list, so that they're basically you're going to have 25 different brands rather than
25 different brands.
So he's saying that you're not, you may, if that's your criteria, you're not actually reporting on, you're possibly not reporting on the top 25 cigars of the year.
Yeah, exactly.
There may be some brands that have 2 or 3 cigars that would make the list, but if you're excluding them, you're bringing in brands that didn't actually deserve to be on the top 25.
Actually, yeah, I kind of get it. I kind of see both ways of it because, in the other way, maybe like it's kind of like winning your conference tournament. So pick the best cigar from that brand, and you win your conference tournament, and you get an automatic bid to the top 25. I can see it both ways. You could probably look at that in 2 different ways.
Yeah, and I think based on internal discussions that all of us have probably had with brands, I don't think I'd be speaking out of turn and saying that the magazines kind of utilize these lists as a way to attract advertisers to advertise in the magazines. And if anybody disagrees with me, feel free to tell me I'm wrong. But I do think that probably drives how what some of their selections are in regards to what they put on these lists. Especially the breaking down and not doing multiples.
But could you picture if Cigar Aficionado did it? Like multiple brands, they'd have 6 or 7 Padrones on the list every year.
Yeah,
and
that's
2 or 3 Olivas. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I kind of see it, why they're doing it.
Right.
I'm not saying I agree with it. I put the best cigars on there, and I took crap from one manufacturer. Why did you put 2 Aladinos on there? I'm like, well, they were 2 top 10 cigars. I mean, what do you want me to?
Yeah, if a brand's going to dominate, a brand's going to dominate.
Yeah,
that's just the way. That's the way it goes.
And my thing is, it's having all of that. The bigger your data set, to me, the more valid that the list is going to be to me, honestly. But then you got all the different lists that all have their own different criteria on how they choose.
Right.
So then again, your data set is slightly flawed in a way as well, too, because of that. Because I can see, like, if somebody wants to put on there, Padron, 1926 number 2, because, it was outstanding year for it, and, because it's going to change every year, obviously, because it's a natural product. But, I mean, when we do top 10s, I'll be honest, I skew more towards what was released that year, more than, I smoked a favorite all year, so you just got to take with the list with a grain of salt, knowing that, it's going to be skewed a little bit one way or the other because of all the different criteria that everybody sets for their own list.
Right.
No, I think you have a really good point, Ben. And I think the issue, and to me, this consensus really shone a light on it, is that you're trying to combine multiple lists that have different criteria instead of saying, if we're going to combine some lists, you have to make sure that the criteria are at least remotely similar. Like, if the lists are only new cigars in the last couple of years, okay, well then combine the lists that are only new cigars in the last couple of years. If the lists are, these are the best cigars I've personally smoked throughout the year, okay, well there's nothing wrong with that. But when you try to combine that with a list that's restricting itself to only new cigars that year, then that essentially adds a bunch of data static to the list, and it doesn't, it doesn't really give you an end result that you're necessarily looking for. At least I don't think.
How about you, Eric? Any thoughts on the list results?
Just to go on Coop's point, we do the Cigar Wars thing, and that's just completely user sourced. So we don't decide any of those winners in the year. It's just all what people have thought was better, and they rank them. Which cigar would you smoke? Blah blah blah. But in the end, there was 3 Padrones in the top 10 and 3 Fuentes in the top 10.
Right.
Yeah,
So
there you go.
that definitely makes
Yep.
that list, a little less exciting because, all right, the majority of that list is 2 companies, so
Yeah.
I can kind of see the reason why you'd want to, not try to push, one brand too much, even if maybe they did have two or three fantastic cigars that year, to make your list a little bit more interesting to the public. It might be, I don't know. I guess I can see that side of it too, just like Coop said.
Yeah.
But I mean, and this, I guess, because our site is geared towards new cigars, and the thing that I've never really understood is if your site doesn't have a specific criteria and you're just saying, well, these are the best cigars I smoked over here, then if you don't have 2 or 3 Padrones, 2 or 3 Fuentes in your list, 2 or 3 Illusione, a couple Tatuaje, then I have to go, well, then what is it you're smoking? Because those should consistently be the best cigars that you've smoked every year.
What was the point, John?
That if our site is geared towards new cigars, and if your site isn't geared towards new cigars and only the best cigars you've smoked that year, then because Eric was saying, because I think you dropped out for it, but Eric was saying they had, because of the crowdsourced list, they had multiple Padrones, and I was saying, well, that makes sense because you should have multiple Padrones.
Yeah,
you should have multiple Fuentes. Like
no, and that's John. That's exactly why we have such a strict. On the dojo's list, it's a strict, this year type of thing. But it is interesting to compare that with Cigar Wars, because then that requirement's gone, and then you do see the exact thing that we're talking about, the Padrones and the Fuentes sort of dominating.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that the average consumer, like, that's great information for the average consumer, but I mean, it might be speaking out of turn, but I don't think the consensus is intended for the average consumer. It's intended for the other media sites. It's intended for brand owners, and it's a bit of a March Madness thing where people kind of want to show off and say, I had the best cigar of the year, blah, blah, blah. And I think a lot of that is lost if you dilute that list by including things that are not based on the same criteria as another list, ultimately.
Right.
yeah.
Kind of going off on a tangent a little bit on that was something that, which Eric, I love y'all's list with the consensus with the crowdsourcing. That's awesome. That's a great list to me personally. I put a lot more validity in that list than anything else, really. But it's something that Skip posted on Facebook that got me thinking. Was he said your top 10 list should be your number one should be the cigar you smoked the most of that year. So
another pearl of wisdom.
Right. So I can see his point, but does that necessarily mean that that's the best cigar that you've had this year, right? So, for this year, we didn't come out with our top cigar of the year list because we had a whole site overhaul and a lot of other factors, so we didn't manage to get our list together. But personally, for me, if I had to pick a cigar of the year, my personal cigar of the year would be the Nat Sherman TAA Timeless. That cigar to me was fantastic. I love that cigar. But, of course, that's not the cigar I smoked the most this year. It's very limited. It's hard to find. It came out. It was gone. Does that mean because I didn't smoke boxes upon boxes upon boxes, that would not be the best cigar of the year? Because I was talking to him, I said, because technically, if you want to say my top cigar of the year would be the one I smoked the most of, honestly, it would be his Whiskey Rebellion Bradford, because I smoked a ton of those this year because my local shop has got them. And every time I go in, I just seem to gravitate towards it. I get it and smoke it. Do I necessarily think that cigar is better than the Nat Sherman TA? No, I don't. So
I mean, if that was a requirement, the Al Capone menthol would be number one for me every year. Hey.
Love those.
All right, so I'll throw this out. If you were curating a consensus, what would your criteria be for kind of what lists that you would include, or what would be the requirements for a list to be able to make it into this group?
Oof.
I think there should be some sort of requirement on the length of time you've been doing this.
Okay.
I mean, a guy that pops up and, bangs out a YouTube channel in an afternoon and has been doing it for 6 months, I just don't think that should be included. I mean, I don't know. Seems like maybe 2 or 3 years of content, or the fact that it just shows that they are dedicated to this and paying attention. Seems like that should be, some type of requirement. I don't know.
Nice. We can finally disagree, Eric.
Okay.
I disagree, and I think that's extremely elitist of you. No, I think I hear what you're saying, but I think provided that somebody's been releasing reviews on a regular basis, that is, I think, not to throw the PCA under this, but kind of like the PCA where you have to have X number of reviews. You can't be included in the list if you've just been open for 2 months. But I think there's a lot of people out there that gravitate towards certain types of sites. They like certain types of personalities. And I think really the only criteria, and Ben, I think you really hit the nail on the head, is that if you're going to compare, if you're going to combine the list, you just have to make sure that the criteria fall within a certain aspect of that criteria. And I don't think you're going to be able to say only new cigars of 2019, but I think it's reasonable to say this is a site that only reviews new cigars, and that might be, the last 18 months or the last 24 months or whatever that might be. And that's enough to be included. But I think if you start cutting it off based on, I don't know you, I've never met you, you're not big enough yet, you haven't made it yet, so sorry, you're little fry, we can't include you. I don't think that'll fly.
Well, I can tell you from experience, because we actually started the consensus list first.
Right.
Brian Hewitt did this for 2 years before, Charlie took it over, and Brian was glad he actually did it because it was a lot of work. But what he did basically was he just used the online media basically at the time. There wasn't a whole lot of people really there wasn't as many sites back in the day that did top 10 lists. So it was a little bit easier to do, but he didn't include, Cigar Aficionado, Cigar Thumb, Cigar Press, or anything. It was just the online media, which made it was a lot of data still, but the criteria was all kind of the same because we were all kind of doing the same thing about, it wasn't like, okay, yeah, the Partagas Black was my number one cigar of the year, like that. It basically kind of like what we've been doing now. It's like, it was usually the top cigars that came out that year was the ones that people put on their top 10 list. So when Brian compiled it, it was pretty eye-opening because we was, but it wasn't a lot of surprises. It was kind of neat. It was like, okay, well, 18 sites had, whatever, the Tatawahe, J21 as their number one cigar or whatever. And the number two it was all kind of the same. It was the same thing. But, like I said, it wasn't a whole lot of stuff out there to actually start pulling this data in from. This is a little bit easier because all the data set had the similar restrictions on what it was used for. So it was, I don't know. I kind of like it to where, like June was saying, if you break it up in the, YouTube community, our online media community, and print media, it would make a little bit more sense, a little bit easier to deal with, I think, in the way. But that's how we did it way back in the day when it was first started.
Yeah.
Yeah, because right now Charlie doesn't give that visibility, right? Like what the sources, who the exact sources are.
No, he does list.
He does. He's
all
pretty
sites.
transparent on it, actually.
He's very transparent.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you could download the spreadsheet on all the data, so you can see all the sites and what cigars were ranked where and all that kind of stuff. So
by the way, John, Charlie made the correction today too. I did message him on it.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice.
And there was an error.
Correction.
It didn't affect the consensus, but there was a gap in the scoring. Actually, it was wrong.
Yeah, and I guess we can just quickly talk about that because one of the comments that Charlie made, and as an analytical guy, it was interesting to me because it seemed like the number one cigar last year had a clear, defined win, and this year it seemed like the cigar kind of squeaked in the win, and turns out that the top scoring cigar was actually slightly miscalculated. So when you actually factor in the corrected score, it's even less of a win than what it was last year. So quite surprising.
Getting back to the question that Aaron said, let me ask a question for Ben, Eric, and the Developing Palates guys. Were you guys ever contacted from Viva La Vida this year?
No.
Was I ever contacted?
Yeah, we like when they were reaching out, hey, try our cigar.
Yes, I was contacted.
Okay, you were probably the only one because there was like a deliberate strategy I think they did.
Right.
They went for smaller brands. They stayed away from most of the established ones. And that's where that score built. That cigar would have never been in the top 3 had Charlie not included the YouTubers and the guys who maybe do 1 or 2 reviews a year.
Single A teams.
So the question is if you put some criteria in, you probably would have eliminated. You would have had a big difference with this. And I think ultimately Charlie has to decide, like I said, where he wants to take the consensus. Because in the online media world, and Eric, I understand why you gave it, by the way, under the radar cigar of the year. I mean, I totally get it because these guys did come out of nowhere, right? I didn't like the cigar, but I totally get it. But that's, I think, what he's got to decide there. I mean, because I don't want to say just because someone does one review, they shouldn't be able to do a top 25 list. But I do think
this is why. Be able to.
Well, I think you should review every cigar that's on your list. That's why I go back to that.
Yeah. I mean, if you review top 25,
you have 5 cigars. Make sure you have 5 reviews with those cigars. That's why I would kind of go with that. Because I think there's a lot of exposure right now for someone to come in and manipulate and make a joke of the consensus. If Charlie continues to allow the one, I think it's got to be a little more stringent criteria because it's not stopping someone from coming in, creating 7 or 8 dummy sites, and winning the consensus.
I'm also a quarter of a person.
Yeah, I mean, that's a topic we discussed. I think, Eric, you and I were kind of joking about that. You were talking to Jordan about it, and I kind of posted about it. Like, all you do is, throw out 7 random domain names, 7 YouTube channels, and you can decide on your own what wins the consensus.
You could totally do it. I mean, I think I'll give Charlie a little more credit. I think he'll do some due diligence on it. But really, if someone did a really good job on it, they could probably fool him.
Yeah, I mean, the Viva La Vida only placed on 5 out of 38 lists, right? But those 5 had it within the top 5 of their lists.
It was
and that was enough to put it into
wasn't a good cigar.
3rd place. And actually, there was a list that was excluded, not by accident, just because it was hard for Charlie to find it. But if that list would have been added, it would have been 1.25 points behind the Sin Compromiso at 2. So it would have been very close to being the number 2 cigar on the list. And I don't know. I mean, when you make it on, I don't know what the percentage is when you're 5 out of 38, but when you're only on, 20%, or it's not even that, it's a tough draw.
Because it's quality over quantity, man.
Yeah. Eric, there's something I like what you do. Because I really watched your criteria this year. One thing I do really like what you do is if 2 people didn't vote for the cigar and it didn't qualify.
Right.
Yeah, that I really like. Yeah, because you eliminate the outlier right there.
We actually had one. So we have like a team of 6 guys.
Yeah.
And we actually had one guy's number 1 cigar, and he was the only one that voted for that cigar. And so that just gets, even though that would have put it somewhere in the top 10,
right?
We just throw it out because
I think it's the right thing to do in that case. Yeah.
I think the elitist approach is the right one, Eric.
I mean, yeah, I mean, but again, in the end, it's Charlie's vision, what he's looking to accomplish. I think this year, I didn't see a lot of compelling, like in previous years, there's a lot of interesting data trends. This year, it was a lot less compelling. Like the whole Placencia winning was really interesting because they didn't give out free samples of this cigar. You know what I mean? They didn't go in that route,
but it's a good cigar. They got it.
It's a good. You know what?
That's the funny thing about it.
That's what I said earlier. It's like probably one of the. Yeah.
It's like doing the math homework, getting the right answer, but when you show all your work, the work's all wrong.
Right. But there's some of the other ones I just really question. Again, how does La Historia sneak up to number 22? I don't get that one. That was crazy.
Jose
La
Blanco
Coalition makes the list out 4 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks, and it was enough to make. I don't. How many people actually smoked that enough to make it?
I smoked a couple from Drapers, but still.
And now, Eric, I know you had it on the list, but you guys, I know, do your due diligence. I'm just saying, I just found it kind of odd that a lot of people didn't. I don't know. I was just.
Coop, you don't know what they've done. If they like
You're
the
right.
cigar, they like the cigar.
Fair
right?
enough. Yeah, it's a fair point. I mean, it's a fair point. Yeah.
Coop's.
Yeah, I have a fundamental issue with the late year.
list.
Yeah, I have a fundamental issue with late entries into the list.
Yeah, we'll get to that part a little bit later.
Yeah,
I mean, that's kind of going back to like how we're talking about making the top 25. I mean, in Coop, you're a big believer in, it has to, deliver continuously, not just one time.
Yeah, I mean that's I think my unique thing, but I get other people have different. There's no wrong criteria. I mean, everyone has their own vision of what this should be. So I disagree with certain things, but it's my opinion, and someone could say I'm crazy because a 2018 cigar won my cigar of the year. So I see it both ways as well.
Yeah, and now that we have the data, I mean, Charlie did all the hard work to collect it, but it doesn't stop anybody from using that data to create, variation lists on what they want to use in their criteria to be able to kind of just report on that kind of information. So they decided, all right, I'm just going to take the online media guys and I'm going to do that, or I'm just going to take sites that only review, closer to calendar 2019, some 2018 stuff in there. You'll be able to come up with different lists and things like that and really show kind of what the best current year cigars or most recent cigar would show out to do. So, I mean, I'm not sure if people are going to do that or not, but that would be interesting data to see as well. All right. Any other final thoughts on the consensus, or we'll move on to the next topic here? Most
disappointing consensus ever.
What? I mean, it wasn't the most disappointing who got number one. Give me 3 things, John, what made it disappointing in your book?
The inclusion of cigars that have been on the marketplace for more than 5 years. Anytime I see that, it just, again, it goes back to what are we looking at the consensus for? And I'm not looking at the consensus to find out what's popular in the market. I know what's popular in the market. To me, it's an industry list and it's for industry people. At least that's my take on it. So, if you want to make a list of what's popular, then go look at Dojo's list, because it's going to be bang on every single time, because it's crowdsourced, and it's exactly. I mean, I think all of us could sit back and go,
just to be clear.
Yes,
that's the Cigar Wars list, not the
Cigar Wars. Pardon me. Sorry.
Right. No worries.
Sorry. So I'm getting myself in real hot water tonight.
No worries.
But yeah, I mean, that's, I think we could all sit down and go, what are the best consumer top 25 cigars? And I think we could probably get pretty close to what the Cigar Wars list is consistently. And I think any retailer who's worth their salt could do the same thing. But to me, that's not what the consensus is about. The consensus is supposed to say, I think the goal of the consensus is to say, amongst online media companies who did top 25 or top 10 lists of new cigars, what cigars consistently rose to the top? What patterns of behavior did we see? Was the ME2 truly the best cigar? Or did it turn out that it was actually the Warhawk, because, 5 out of 11 sites gave the Warhawk number 3. And that's kind of what I'm looking at for the consensus. But It's not my consensus. So, that's what I would do with it, but it's not my consensus.
Create the OMCs, man.
We're actually going to do it.
Clearly, we cannot come to a consensus on the consensus.
Right. But yeah, I mean, no, I hear what you're saying, John. I was just curious. I was disappointed at it too, because I think, it just didn't reflect what was. It just you put all these disparate things in, and you get a bunch of slightly above average cigars.
Yeah, man. I mean, playing a bunch of instruments all at the same time, it's just not music, it's a bunch of noise. And that's from a data perspective, it's an interesting project, and I think you could probably pull out some really interesting results. But I think Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Seth, I cut you off there.
No, I mean, I think we all said it. Charlie fucked up.
Yep.
So let's just move on.
Nah.
Any predictions on how you think the consensus maybe shakes out in future years based on the results from this year?
I think he's going to get banned, man. I think there's going to be him and, two small people and the big five. And, I don't think it happens. I don't think we're going to see it.
I think he's got to change the one review rule for starters, but I think it's got to be something. I don't think it has to be ridiculously high, but I think it's got to be something a little more than that.
Okay.
I don't think he changes anything else on it. I don't know if I would change anything else he's doing with it.
You're saying I'm a quarter of a person, Coop? You're saying
you should be a quarter of a person.
Why should I be a quarter of a person?
Because remember the year Cigar Federation used 13 lists and Ezra Zion Tantrum becomes number one, the consensus winner.
So you're judging everybody off of one person.
No, but
you're stereotyping.
No, I'm not stereotyping. The thing is,
you're such a snowflake.
Charlie. I'm being a communist. Everyone gets an equal share.
You are a communist.
I'm being a communist. Everyone gets an equal share. That's why I like when he fixed that in 2014. I was very critical of the consensus the first 3 years because it was weighted to guys who had more lists. Right now, I think when he kind of gave every site an equal shot at it, I think he did well with it.
Seth, we're actually on the dojo. We're actually 1/6 of a person. It's just that we do it before it gets to the list.
Right.
We got Commie Coop yelling at us.
Commie Coop.
But I wouldn't want it any other way. I wouldn't want my picks to be counted as full. Like the dojo is the dojo list.
Right. Listen, dude, I'm a pale, blue-eyed German who does not want to be considered a quarter of a person. I'm just a struggling white guy right now, and I got Commie Coop yelling at me.
Commie Coop.
All right, so I think we beat the consensus.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's talk about a little bit of cigar performance over 2019. I know we've had discussions on this on various shows, but I'm going to ask a very blunt question. You guys can be as honest as you want. Do you think the average cigar reviewed in 2019 was better than the average cigar reviewed in 2018?
Never a better year for cigars.
That's a great year.
No, I'm just kidding. Strike that from the record.
Yeah,
I think. Do you have my numbers, Aaron? Is that fine?
I do have your numbers. It's going to take me a second to pull it up. So
I didn't know if you had. I didn't know if it was like a trick question. Like
I have your numbers in fancy analytics software, and it was fascinating.
I'd say mine is the same.
There we go. You cut out for a second. Say it again.
My final answer is it's consistent.
Well, I mean, I cut off the numbers a couple weeks ago, so it might not accurately reflect. But I can tell you, and this is kind of based on. So Aaron had released an article, which was what's the title?
90.
When a 90 is not a 90, and I'm always about, because I'm an analytical guy, and that's kind of my job now, outside of spending thousands of dollars to try and get free samples. My paying job is data analytics. So I wanted to take all of our internal data analytics and take a look and see if there was any, information I could kind of garner. And there was sort of two things that really stood out for me. One is our average score, and Aaron wrote about this, our average score was down across the board between 2018 and 2019. And I was like, okay, well, maybe it's just fanboy Aaron, or maybe it's fanboy John, but no, all four of us were actually consistently down 3/4 of a point, I think it was. 3/4 of a point, which I know people have a really hard time understanding the numbers between 0 and 10. It's very complicated, but as a percentage, that's a massive statistical outlier. And when you include all four people, that's an even more statistical outlier. And then one of the most fascinating things, and you'll love this, Seth, is that you use the range of the score more than anybody else, which I thought was fantastic.
Highs and lows, which to me kind of validated the whole, we're not just using between 5 and 6. We're not just using between 6 and 7. You used the most range, and you had done that more than the previous year. And even within that,
again, the average score weighted for all four of us was down substantially. So,
Seth was drunk for a lot of 2019, so maybe that.
I mean, who wasn't?
Probably.
Just 2019.
What was my 2019 comment on Viva La Vida? Who would have thought that we would have had a cigar that needed to apologize to Coldplay?
Oh my god! Actually, by the way, yeah, we talked about that on Dave's show, Dave Burke's show too. I agree.
I'm still trying to pull that data, but
yeah. So I mean, yeah. So I mean, really, I think there was we pulled a number of different sites. I think that when you pulled the sites, I think it was consistently across most media sites were showing a down average score. And I mean, I think we've got enough of a sample size on a lot of these sites. Like we reviewed between 95 and 114 cigars for the year each. I don't know how many cigars Coop reviewed, probably like 600.
173.
See, I mean, that's, that's a lot of cigars to be pulling from a sample size. And when you look at 173?
Yeah, I mean, and I cut down for, obviously I was at 200 at one point. So
God, you don't even sleep.
Well, it's gone. Yeah, 173 is a lot more manageable now.
That's crazy. So I mean, you take 170 cigars in 2018, 170 cigars in 2019, and if you say consistently across those sample sites, you're down year over year. That's down year over year, and I mean, you could argue that maybe it's a sampling issue, but I feel like we do a pretty good job of hitting most of the brands that are represented in the market. Do you guys think that's fair?
How many companies did you guys review this year? Do you know?
I don't have
I reviewed 66 this year. So I felt like I hit a good cross section. And a lot of that, but a lot of it too is, did I really hit a brand enough? So, but yeah, I think 66 is a lot too. Right. 66 is a lot of companies to have, I would say. But if you can if you can average 2 or 3 cigars per company, I think you're in a good, healthy ratio.
So, Seth, the data I have is from December of 18 to end of November of 19. So it's not a true, 2018 versus 2019 breakdown. So I can't give you that data. But for you were 6.23 for 2018, 6.13 for 2019. So just a kind of a tenth of a point. And you had the lowest variation between the years. But like for John, it was 6.48 versus 6.27. June was 6.77 to 6.53, and I was 6.18 to 5.79. So, we all had a drop down, but the variation just kind of differentiated between us.
See, I may be a drunk, but I'm steady and consistent.
Yeah, and I think with the cigars that you reviewed more towards in December and early January, that it probably would have brought that number up. You may have been even or slightly higher for 2019, actually.
Yeah, great year for cigars.
Never better year for.
Sorry.
No, it's never better year for cigars.
Especially Maduros, I think.
Yeah, you're a Maduro.
You're a Maduro.
That's a 2020 Davidoff, probably.
So one of the things I just want to finish off my section on here. What I found fascinating as I was going through and paring down my top 25 list is I was looking at the scores and sort of, figuring out what was going to make the cutoff and what wasn't. And when I was looking at that, so talking about, how sometimes stats doesn't necessarily tell you the full story. If I had used my list from 2018, the scores that were given out in 2018 for the scores that were given out in 2019, in 2019, I would have only had a top 13 out of 25 list. The other cigars wouldn't have made my top 25 list.
Right.
So to me, that to me is a substantial gap. Of those cigars, only one of the cigars in my top 5 would have made top 10 in 2018. So there's a big gulf.
I have the same sentiment. It's almost like saying my 11th through 25th numbers top cigars for this year is almost it's almost embarrassing to put up.
Yeah. All right. So, hit the kind of the cutoff of how the list would work on the DP side. And I don't know if the other guys would have data for that, but let's talk a little about the actual cigars that are being reviewed and the quality. So show samples versus ship samples versus retail samples. Did you guys think that there was a gap between how those cigars actually performed across the year, and which ones were the better choice or the better performing cigars?
We'll say, Aaron, I noticed that gap about 4 or 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Now I've been going to more trade shows and stuff, so it takes a few years, I think, to kind of, but I think once you go to 4 or 5 trade shows, you kind of go through it. So I always felt that the trade show samples were not something that should be reviewed.
Mm-hmm.
I do think we need trade show samples, by the way. So I think it's very important because we want to be able to touch the product, see the product, and try the product, certainly.
Right.
But so I do think that there has been, I think that gaps existed for a while. I mean, that's just my opinion.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah, I've never go off trade show samples.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of funny because I was burned pretty bad on it, and Matt Booch showed up.
That's the one I was thinking about. That was the one I was thinking about. Yeah,
I got so screwed on that one.
You all did, not just you.
Yeah, me and Matt, we've talked about it in length before. When his Room 101 first came out,
was the talk of the show
sample. It was outstanding. And I really screwed up, and I reviewed, this is years and years and years ago, I reviewed that show sample. And then when the cigar came out, it was nothing like what we got at the show, not even remotely close to it. And people were like, what in the hell were you thinking? This doesn't taste like what you said. It's not nothing like what you described, all this. I'm like, And I learned my lesson. Never trust a show sample, ever.
Right.
The other bad one, Gran Habano Azteca.
Oh my God, yes. That was a big one, yeah.
That was like, I remember someone gave me one, and then I was like, man. And I was like pleading with my retailer to buy a couple boxes, and they finally did. They brought them in, and I was like, oh man.
Here's the other thing I'll add on to this. Don't review rep samples either. If you're not going to review show samples, don't review rep samples.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they're even worsely cared for, is what I'll say. So some take care of it. I don't want to say all reps do, but I mean, I read some guys' reviews. Hey, the rep came in the store and he gave me a free sample, and the review's out that afternoon, by the way. It's a glowing review. But I've seen the rep samples. Sometimes they're not under ideal circumstances, so you want to be careful with those as well.
They're sitting in coolers and trunks.
They're sitting in trunk. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. They are. So, so I would put now, if it comes to an official marketing channel, then yes, I think then I'll do that. But then that's why it goes through my humidor for 21 days after that. Because again, I don't know what at least I can stabilize it and put it, say at least 21 days under my conditions. I feel I can take ownership of it at that point.
Eric, do you guys smoke? Review show samples or just purchase your own?
We just purchase our own.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, we smoke all the show samples, but that just gives us an idea as to
what you should target for reviews.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, we definitely got to do this one. We got to see what it's all about. And that's what I was saying. Like early November, we start buying a ton of stuff, and stuff that we tried at the show, stuff that maybe we didn't try at the show, stuff that we heard buzz about, and stuff that people that are smoking on the Dojo app that love, that kind of stuff. And then we just bring it in and smoke it. But we're just buying it ourselves, just with our own money. Mm-hmm. And that way we feel like it's the best representative of that cigar,
Right.
Makes sense.
All right, let's talk about timing of releases. So what are your guys' thoughts on what impact the time of year a cigar is released has on, overall scoring? So like a cigar that ends up getting released January, February versus a cigar that's released, trade show July versus a cigar that maybe October, November, December release.
Anything before mid-August is forgotten.
Yeah.
By
Anything before.
Anything before.
Like Rancho Oscuro was a good. I said that was a good example of one. Yeah.
Yeah, I made number 4 on our list, though. I mean,
it made number 7 on mine, but it missed a lot of lists. I think that it should have hit.
Oh, okay. So you're saying you're just in general, yeah. That
Yeah,
could be.
yeah. You know, I get it. I think you guys have always taken a 12-month approach with it. So,
right.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, the way we do it is it's based on the review score of how they qualify for the list. So I think a good example for us is that the Winston Churchill LE from this year. It was an earlier release, but it still did well because it was just the score that it got. But that may have gotten forgotten by some sites just based on it being coming out in January or February or whenever it was released. So I could see that being the case, and I do think just the nature of how people are. It's kind of what's more in the forefront of their mind, and that's going to be stuff that's more recent that they've smoked. Any other thoughts on that, or we kind of wrap that up?
No, I think I don't think it matters when it's released or when it's reviewed. My thing is when it's cigar of the year. That's when I have the issue.
Mm-hmm.
I will say but this is one thing I think I've talked about. If this is where some manipulation can come in at the end of the year list. If you have cigars in the queue to review, and this is what I call the tabernacle syndrome, okay? And Nick Melillo's cigar comes out, you bump all those other cigars so you get Nick Melillo's review in. That's where I have a little bit of a problem. Mm-hmm. Like I that's why I try as much as possible to go first in, first out.
Right
now, for that reason, because like I said, I think you're doing a disservice to those other cigars. And you're doing this disservice to Nick as well, I think, in that case.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the one thing I will say is try not to, because and then now you don't want to be that guy who's the fanboy. You don't want to be, like I said, I don't think it's a problem with anyone on this panel, but I've seen it with other lists. I'll be honest with you.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm with Coop on that. I think the idea that you can release a cigar in November and fresh off the retailer shelf and it's placing your top 10. I don't like smoking cigars that fresh out of the retailers to begin with, but the idea that and I think we've seen it like the last 3 or 4 years when the consensus had more an accurate sampling of top lists, a more accurate sampling of top lists. I think we saw that year over year, and like you said, it kind of became the Nick criteria where everyone kind of rushed out November 28th or whatever to get the cigar reviewed like 2 days before the list was due. And not that there's anything wrong with that. It just
no. I remember I even said, Eric, I know I said something to you on it, and you made a good point. You said, hey, look, I was smoking a lot of these pre-releases up until that point. And you know what? I wanted to get the review, and I felt comfortable enough with it. So I can see it, but I don't think everyone else has been in that boat is what I'm saying. That's just, yeah.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about Villiger. So they did not attend the PCA show in 2019. Do you think that had any impact in regards to their performance on any of the top lists?
I think that Black Forest would have done a lot, would have gotten a lot more attention if they were attended at PCA.
Okay.
You think so? I mean, they probably did a pretty good job of sending it out to most of the media outlets.
I don't think
that matters.
I don't think. No, I don't think that matters as much. I mean, I don't know how much they got it out to the media members, but introducing that brand at the show gives you an opportunity to announce it, and it's going to help the brand get more recognition.
Sure.
I agree with that. I mean, because at the show, all of us cover the show, and we do our, like we do the video interviews, and everybody discusses what's news coming out. So you at least get the buzz out there, even if the cigar is not going to be released for a couple of months. So by the time the cigar gets out there, it has a little bit of a buzz from our coverage of the trade show. So without that, you're missing a key component of helping your cigar out in, reviews or, just having a buzz on it for consumers too.
Right. Go ahead, Coop.
The Vencedora, right, got the high score for them. Right? But did it make the top 25 last year? It didn't. Or this year. I don't know if Villiger's gotten a pop on any premium cigar release they've had at the trade show. I think it's more about having kind of a presence there, just the Villiger name out there. Just to kind of say we're here and we're still in business. I don't think they have to invest a lot in a major release for it. That's just my opinion on that one. I think they've done a good job at marketing and promoting their cigars, and they've had some good cigars. So I don't think do you think that any of those cigars they released this year, the Marinana, the re-release of the La Libertad, or the Black Forest, maybe the Black Forest would have had a little bit of a pop.
I think the Black Forest would have had a pop. I
think they should have released it before the show, right before the show is what I would have did.
Yeah. But instead
they waited too long.
They held it back, and then it just kind of came out of nowhere.
Right.
I didn't get it till later in the year. So
yeah.
They just announced today that the Tobacco do Brazils are coming out at TPA.
Right.
So they have 2 new cigars, and we'll see how they do.
Now, with the Big Four not attending the trade show in 2020, do you think that will have effect on their performance on lists next year or this coming year?
I think if you look at the companies, Drew Estate, usually for the most part, if they have a very good job. They do a good job of connecting and communicating with members of the media.
Mm-hmm.
I think Davidoff will have no problem communicating with the people that they communicate with.
Right.
It's the same for the other 4 companies. I don't think it'll have an impact at all.
Yeah, I could see it affecting General and Altadis. I don't think that they're as strong in regards to reach out to the media.
I don't think Davidoff needs to, and I don't think but I think you could probably see a push from Drew Estate saying, hey, we could put a little bit of money into this if we really wanted to, just see what it does.
Let's suppose Davidoff was coming out with Davidoff Venezuela, right? I'm just making something up here, right? The Davidoff Venezuela, right?
Actually, explosives.
They're going to find a way to promote that trade show or not.
Right.
Right. So they're going to get it into people's hands. They're going to have a big push with it. So I say no. I think, Aaron, the one of the 4 that you mentioned is Altadis, and because I just think of those 4 companies, they've made them great ground, but they've struggled the biggest of the 4 of connecting with media.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I think they have, yeah.
Well,
yeah.
And here's to counter that. I don't think Altadas will have any problem with not having success. Maybe not getting recognition from online media.
Yeah.
But they're still going to sell more of those cigars than the other companies.
Yes.
They also have no online presence whatsoever either.
Yeah. So it's really like, who cares?
Right.
I care about you guys. I care about everybody.
Can we assess the comments in the chat room tonight or no?
Sure. Do you have something you want to bring up?
No, I'll get into trouble if I make any comments about the comments in the chat room tonight. I'll leave it at that. Just kidding. Go ahead, guys.
Right. We'll chat about the FDA now a little bit. So, I don't know if there was any huge FDA news in 2019. I think there was a delay in some deadlines that had come up, pushing things into 2020. But do you guys have any comments on any FDA stuff as it pertained to the 2019?
No, I think they went after. I think they made it clear they're going after flavors.
Right.
So I think that was a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
The comments were submitted for substantial equivalence, but I think you're right. There wasn't a policy directive that came in this year. They stated an intent on flavored cigars, which I think we're going to see more of this year.
What about their statement that they just admitted that premium cigars are just not going to be a priority for them?
Technically, it's 2020. I think it was technically a 2020 comment they made that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think technically, yeah. It just came out like the first couple days of the year.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Again, we got to see how that flushes out too. What that exactly is going to mean.
You got to be. Coop, I know I expressed this to you. You know, my concern is that with a comment like that, do people then think, you know, whatever? Let's just let's just have fun with it. They're not going to bother with us, and that's where some problems are going to come.
Well, that doesn't mean they said they weren't going to go after you. They said they're going to prioritize. If some dope wants to go and start being a cowboy in the Wild Wild West, and is going to be stupid enough, and the FDA, I think, the FDA is going to say that they're never going to say we're not going to go after you guys. But if someone decides to push the line, they could certainly say, "Hey, look, this dope is pushing the line. We're gonna, you know."
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But I think you're going to see people try to push the line as much as possible.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
All right. Any other items from 2019 we want to chat about, or should we start getting to our look ahead into 2020?
What did you guys? I mean, I missed the beginning of the show. Did you get into like a couple of the other like stuff like the Davidoff Avos controversies?
We did discuss that.
We did.
Okay. So yeah, I don't want to. Those are just.
Yeah, you do.
What do you mean? Yeah, I do.
You know.
No, I'm not gonna repeat that again. Yeah, we don't need to repeat that again. You know, it was. So I was just wondering if there were a couple of anything else that any of those other stories. So I'll just.
Okay. So we'll stick with the FDA then. Any thoughts on what the FDA's role is in the industry going into 2020? Is substantial equivalence, does that turn out to be a big thing actually going to be taking place here in 2020, or does that end up getting pushed out again?
I think it's going to come down to, Aaron, what Scott Pierce said, how much of what Scott Pierce said is true. If there's something coming down from the White House, it's going to give some sort of relief. Right. Then I think after that, everything else will dovetail off that.
Okay.
And he seemed pretty confident on that.
Right.
So, how long has that been in limbo so far? Like 2 years?
6 and 16, right? That's when it kind of all started.
June 16. That would be
awful long time to not really do anything about it.
Yeah.
Well, you know, there's some delays and stuff.
That'll be a post-election thing.
Yeah.
Did you guys talk about Cornelius and Anthony disappearing?
We did, actually. June brought that up. That
okay,
was
good.
One of the disappointments for him for 2019.
Yeah.
We said, hey, they disappeared.
It's like they decided to not do it.
All right, I don't want to derail the show. I apologize, guys. You guys sound like
all right. So PCA and TPE for 2020. How do we see these trade shows shaking out this year? Does TPE? First off, what do we see? What foresee TPE doing? Do we see it as a some brands are taking it as the serious level where they're kind of bringing the same type of manpower as a PCA, or is it you're going to see a couple reps from a brand in a small booth, kind of just seeing what happens, or what do we see shaking out?
Has any of you guys gone to TPE yet?
I went about 4 years ago.
Oh, well, yeah. What was that like? I'm curious.
It was like, ironically, the only company that had like an actual booth was Cornelius and Anthony, because they were testing it out for the IPCPR. And I mean, everybody was there. There was a lot, Jonathan Drew was there. There was a lot of people there. They just didn't really have a real presence or anything. And so it wasn't anything like the show we were used to, but I think a lot's changed since then, obviously. So I'm sure when I go this year, it's going to seem dramatically different. But I mean, I remember at the time just like hanging out with Jonathan and a couple other, industry guys, just sitting in chairs, and nobody was even talking to him or bugging him. He was just like a regular dude. That's how it was, Obviously that can't happen at a really big show. So that just goes to show you that scope was so incredibly different. But I'm really looking forward to seeing it this year and see how the difference between the 4 years,
That reminds me kind of when we went to Enter Tobacco when we with Balmoral, and you go to Enter Tobacco, it was more like TPE is over there. And you're right, it wasn't like, for instance, we hung out a lot at my father booth with Pete, right? And hardly anybody came up, like a lot of fanboys at IPC or PCA, whatever, that come up to him and hog up all his time. At Enter Tobacco, it was opposite. Like nobody hardly came by, and when they did, one group of Asian customers came in and tried to talk to him, and what they want to know is where was Don Pepin. They want to talk to him, which is kind of
Nice.
funny, you know. But it was kind of nice because you can focus more on the business side too. But I think TPE and PCA can coexist. And to me, if I had a company, I would have smaller booths at both trade shows because I would think there would be a benefit of both of them. I don't think one's going to overtake the other or nothing like that. But I mean, if you're primary just premium cigars, TPE is not going to have as much for you as probably PCA would.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of companies do more than just premium cigars. So TPE will have a lot of benefit as well. So I can see them, a lot of companies doing both trade shows, but maybe not at the huge scale as like some of the booths that are at PCA now.
Right. Yeah, I'm interested to see how they go.
Yeah. So I don't see the staffing at TPE even indicative that any of these companies have real expectations of writing a lot of orders. Most of the reps are staying home.
Right.
Maybe the local reps are going. So I'm just not seeing it. I think you're going to see some orders being written. I think there'll be maybe a couple companies that put a lot into it, but I'm not seeing that's going to happen. And PCA, I think, will have another bad year of a trade show similar to what we saw last year, and they'll still they'll still be there'll be a lot more busier booths there. So I think both are going to fall below expectations until TP can show me that this is a buying show, and it may take a few more years. It's not in the same. It's single A ball compared to the major leagues with PCA.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Coop, do people call you Bill?
There are people who refer to me as Bill. Yes.
Oh.
It's depends on the circles. There are people who call me William, and a lot of people call me Will, and there's people who call me Coop. But
I put that in there, June.
Yeah, but
Oh,
I was going to say that I have to use a different ID because we're using the platform. We have the common platform we all share. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Bill.
All right. Any thoughts on mergers and acquisitions happening in 2020?
Pisses me off.
So we saw Fonseca get bought up by my father, right?
Hope.
Do we see more of that?
That's be a good thing. I mean, yeah, I see more of it coming down the pipe, honestly.
Yeah.
You know, but the one that I'm most pissed off about is the Balmoral acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
You know, General does not have a good track record for buying up a really good cigar line company and maintaining it. I mean, let's be honest, they kind of fuck it up.
Right.
So
Yeah.
then that's what I'm worried about, because Balmoral was one of my favorite companies, because pretty much everything they've been putting out, I thought it was been really, really spectacular.
Yeah.
I'm worried they're going to Toronto that brand, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I thought, Ben, the word Tarano. I mean, when you couldn't find a way to fit Tarano into your company portfolio, Tarano had a good set of brands, they had a nice following, and they had a lot of predicate stuff, and they could not figure a way to put Tarano into the portfolio. How are they going to figure this out with Balmoral is my question.
Well, I mean, they destroyed CEO before that.
Yeah.
Right.
I think CEO you could say was successful. It took a while for him to get there, but I think
I don't know, man.
Amazon Basin.
Do you remember CEO?
Flathead.
Yeah. Okay. What about the Brasilia and the Italia and all the X lines that they had?
It didn't die.
The session is here, you guys.
But CEO didn't die. Tarano died.
Well, I mean, Tarano died. Yes, Tarano. But I mean, it's not like CEO is like living on. I mean, the CEO. I mean, come on, man. You remember what CEO was before all that stuff, when the Osgeners were doing things, and Huber was there with that marketing team.
Listen, they sold a lot of flatheads in Amazon bases. So I'm just say that. I'm not arguing that.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's my point. Like I said, it may not have been what we remember it as, but the brand certainly is viable there.
That's true.
Like, I don't know how to. I don't know.
I'll give you that. I'll give you that point. But what you're talking about is is new lines that they came up with and just throw it under the CAO name. I'm talking about like Balmoral has already got stellar lines now, right? All the stellar lines that CO had when they bought it out, they're not there anymore. Like my favorite CO ever was a La Traviata. That thing is just destroyed.
Oh, man,
Yeah.
those were good.
Remember those? That was almost my cigar of the year 10 years ago. Yeah.
What were the major acquisitions of this past year? Can someone go through the list real quick?
Yeah, there was Royal Agio, which happened. That was a actual company that acquired. The other was Lars Teton. My father and Fonseca, and I guess you could on a smaller scale you can count Dissident. But the only one that was the only one that was really a company acquisition was the Royal Agio. They bought everything. I mean, they bought the company. Like Lars Teton's, Alan Rubin bought the brands. He didn't buy like the physical. I don't think he bought the physical, infrastructure of the company.
Yeah, but I think Alec Bradley's gonna breathe new life in the Lars Teton line.
Yeah, I think they're already starting.
Same with my father and right, you're right. And the Fonseca, like my father's not gonna buy that and not do something pretty spectacular.
I'm going to make a bold prediction. You do not see a new Fonseca this year. If you see one, maybe 2021. You won't see a new Fonseca this year.
Okay.
I'll tell you one thing. If they're going to do a Fonseca, they got to do it out of Miami. That's where they got to do it.
Yep. I think that'll be the best place to do it. Well, how cool would it be if you collaborate with Pete on that?
I was going to say Pete's
awesome.
going to be a part of that.
Exactly.
Pete's gonna be a part of that.
I mean, Pete and collaborates. Yeah, perfect. Ben, here, one more point on the Royal Agio. I think that's really tough here. Because you know the brand. You guys probably know the brands. All you guys. This is a question for you. You guys know this brand pretty well. How do you have this brand without Boris Wintermans anymore? Because so many of those blends were tied to his preferences with the Brazilian tobacco. I just don't know how you even can have the same messaging at this point.
I mean, unless General went in with the intention to get, with the continued operations is to continue that relationship they have with like that Brasilia Cubre, and they have a huge Indonesian aspect as well. But I know what you're saying, Coop.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that would be, I don't think you're gonna see any more collaborations. The duettos, I think they're done, and Paso Dobles, they're done.
Yeah, I don't think the collaborations are definitely gone. There's no doubt. But I mean, so what all is staying behind? That's the thing,
I mean, I bet you they're going to assess and look at what's doing well. To be honest with you, I bet you could see the San Pedros just completely go away, and you'll just see the Balmoral and Yeho, probably the Nicaragua and I bet they'd probably get rid of the Connecticut. Well, maybe they'd keep the Connecticut. I don't know.
Well, that would be stupid. Okay, I know what you're saying. I get it. But my thing is, so I'm assuming they obviously they got the factory in the Dominican.
Yeah.
Right. So is Francisco Bautista staying with them? Is he going to be with them to help with the blends?
From my understanding, I didn't get a yes or no, but I think it's one of these things they're really beginning to assess all these guys and the roles they had.
Well, if he stays and they leave him alone, I hope it'll be okay. Just put it that way. I'm trying to remain hopeful, but if he stays and they let him continue doing what he's doing, I think they'll be okay. I really do.
Yeah, I mean that would be. I mean, if I were them, you look at the factory. Okay, what else can we get out of the factory possibly? What else can we do with some of this tobacco? Because didn't they buy the whole facilities in Belgium too?
They bought everything.
Yeah, they bought everything. I mean, dude, that facility was like tip-top shape last time you and I were there. It's probably not even gone downhill.
No, it was probably I mean, I've been pretty vocal about kind of being pissed off about this and how General hope they don't screw it up. And behind the scenes, I've been told, look, they don't plan on changing. They're mainly cared about the machine maids in the Europe market more than anything.
Yeah.
They're going to try to leave the premium cigars alone. Hopefully they'll stick to their word and keep riding it. I mean, the quality cigars leave them alone. You'll be fine. I mean, General will be fine with those. They'll make a good bit of money with those cigars if they just leave them alone.
Yeah.
All right, last topic. Any predictions for cigar media in the year 2020? This could be anything around sites themselves, how top 25 lists shake out, anything like that.
Coop works for Cigar Aficionado.
I was gonna say, I think we're overdue.
I'd have to move back to New York.
I'm kidding.
I think we're overdue on an online media brand being purchased out by a manufacturer / brand owner, and I'm quite sincere. I think that might happen in 2020.
Does Robert Holt buy a media brand?
I don't know if
What?
I don't know if it's Robert Holt. I'm thinking more of the
He's gonna pay
General
off.
Altadis
Sure.
companies.
Buying out a media brand.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see this continued push of the retailers becoming media people.
Oh yeah.
I think it's continuing to grow. And I don't like it. Not that some people, look, I work with Abe, does a good job. The problem is it blurs the lines a lot, is what I don't like. So I get people asking me, hey, can you send me this, I want to order 3 of these cigars or 5 of these cigars in your review.
Do you guys know if there was a increase in YouTubers from last year to this year?
100%. Yeah.
See, there was an increase, but I don't know if they were all new. I think Charlie put out a notice this year saying, hey, come, if you want to be submitted to consensus, tell me, and I'll look at you.
Yeah, I think he also did that last year. I just think that there was maybe some of them were very early on at this time last year, but it was definitely a bigger push this year on the YouTube side, I think.
Yeah.
There's probably be more of that. I mean, it's so much easier to start up than.
Does any of the media brands fold this year?
Well, I think we saw one possibly fold at the end of 2019, and that was Cigar Smoke.
Cigar Smoke went down, yeah.
Because that went down, I want to say September, and didn't come out with a list. So there's a possibility that's gone. I don't know if that returns.
That sounds depressing when we say it like this.
Yeah.
I was gonna name someone, but I was
thinking like airplane.
His webpage is now parked. It's not even down. Its webpage is parked.
Yeah.
I was gonna say something. Yeah.
Say it, June.
No, these guys are my pseudo friends. These guys are my IPCPR friends / internet friends.
So you're saying Cigar Federation?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. Just want to make sure we're all talking about the same thing.
No, content's been quite a lull, right? So
they, quality-wise, they've been very good. Quantity-wise, they haven't. I agree. Quality-wise, I think they do a really good job. But it was a shame that we didn't have their list out in time this year. But I think as a review site, they're not much of a presence anymore as far as cigar reviews go. I think they're more focused on the podcast.
Yeah.
I think Logan's going to come back and revive it.
Don't hold your breath.
That won't happen.
Don't give them any idea. I mean, they don't have to. They don't have to. Like, you mean like the sale of Cigar Federation to Logan and the sale back?
He rebranded to Coffee Federation.
Right.
CEO. Come on.
MFC. Yeah.
All right. Anything else we want to chat about, or I think we're wrapping it up? All right. Well, I want to thank all you guys. I want to thank you, Eric, Ben, Will. Thank you all for joining in to talk with us about stuff that nobody cares about, and I'm sure we'll rile Steve Saka up about all the Monday morning quarterbacking that we were doing about cigar lists and all those things that don't.
Only our highest rated shows, Aaron. By the way,
exactly.
No one cares. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So, thank you guys again for joining us. I really appreciate that. So, I want to thank everybody that tuned in and watched us live, or are you gonna follow up and watch
thanks for those great chat comments. By the way, it was they were just incredible, is what I gotta say.
Exactly.
What the fuck were people talking about?
All kinds of stuff, man.
Oh,
they were
like crude shit. We should talk about it.
Juan Cancel said he's buying Cigar Dojo. I don't know if there's any truth to that.
He should.
He said that John is going to go out on his own and he's going to create a solo album. So, there's all
Yes.
kinds of things that are going to be happening in the cigar world that we don't even know about yet. So, 2020 is going to be a fascinating year, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Hey, Aaron, Friday night,
Yes.
we're going to have Coop on our show.
Okay.
And we're going to do
nice.
from seed to Coop.
All right.
So,
And this is
Coop.
a live in studio
I am
appearance.
Yeah, so we're gonna figure out what makes Coop Coop.
There we go.
You know what? I can't wait. I can't wait to raid that Dojo humidor.
Yeah, there you go.
That's what I'm looking forward to the most. I'm gonna raid that humidor. I'll talk about sample.
Eric, do you have a typewriter that you could set up in front of him
Yes.
for this show? Okay.
Yes.
Just want to make sure
We'll get a typewriter. We'll get the green visor.
Yep.
I'm in.
All right. Perfect. All right. I want to thank everybody that tuned in. Thank you for joining us on the show. Thank you for everybody that joined us on part of the panel. This is something that we do on a yearly basis and around the trade show as well. Maybe we'll do a TPE version with you, Eric, if you're interested in joining us with Coop. All right, guys, that's it. Thank you for joining in. We will catch you on the next one.
Thanks, fellas.